At his wedding, my son stood before 300 guests at the most expensive hotel in Boston. He held a glass of vintage champagne that cost more than my first car. I sat in the back row with my wife Alice waiting for a thank you. I was waiting for him to acknowledge that I had liquidated my entire retirement fund to pay for this night. Instead, he looked me in the eye and smiled a cold, cruel smile. He announced into the microphone that he was ashamed to be my son. He said the name Bennett was a stain on his ambition. He announced he was legally changing his last name to Harrington to honor his wife's wealthy family. Everyone laughed. They applauded his courage. They thought it was a victory for his social climbing. I stood there with $85,000 of debt on my shoulders and a heart that had just stopped beating. He thought he was escaping a poor legacy. He did not know that the name Bennett was the key to a dormant empire. That same week, I inherited $10 million. But he had already signed his rights away. My name is George Bennett. I am 70 years old. I have grease under my fingernails that no amount of scrubbing can remove. I spent 50 years as a mechanic fixing other people's mistakes. I lived a quiet life. I lived a humble life. I believed that if you worked hard and loved your family, you would be rewarded. I was wrong. The reward does not come from sacrifice. It comes from power. And I was about to get a lot of it. The crystal chandeliers of the Fairmont Copley Plaza hummed with a light that hurt my eyes. It was a golden, aggressive light. It highlighted the fray on my tuxedo cuff. It highlighted the pale exhaustion on Alice's face. My wife sat beside me, clutching her handbag like a shield. She was 68 years old, and her heart was failing. The doctors told her to avoid stress. They told her to rest. Yet here we were at the event that had drained the life out of us. I looked around the ballroom. It was a sea of silk and designer suits. The flower arrangements alone cost $12,000. I knew the price because I wrote the check. I knew the price of the imported lobster on the plates. I knew the price of the live orchestra playing waltzes in the corner. I knew it all because Brandon had demanded it. "Dad, you only get married once," Brandon had said 6 months ago. "The Harringtons are used to a certain standard. We cannot look cheap. We cannot look cheap." That phrase echoed in my head. I looked at the table in front of us. It was table number 24. It was the last table in the room. We were placed next to the kitchen doors. Every time a waiter walked out with a tray of dirty dishes, the swinging door hit the back of Alice's chair. This was where the groom's parents were seated. In the center of the room sat the Harrington family, Rich and Susan Harrington. They owned half the commercial real estate in downtown Boston. They sat at the head table like monarchs holding court. Rich was laughing loudly. He was a large man with a red face and teeth that were too white. He clapped Brandon on the shoulder. He treated my son like a prize poodle he had just bought at an auction. I felt a hand on my arm. It was Alice. Her fingers were trembling. "George," she whispered, "are you okay?" I patted her hand. "I am fine, Alice. Just enjoy the music." I was lying. I was not fine. I was doing mental math. Before this wedding, my savings account held $85,000. It was money we saved for 30 years. It was money for Alice's heart surgery. It was money for a new roof. It was money for peace of mind. Now the balance was zero. Actually, it was less than zero because I had put the deposit for the venue on a credit card. Brandon stood up. The room went silent. He tapped his spoon against his glass. The sound rang out like a bell. He looked handsome. I will give him that. He had my chin and Alice's eyes, but the suit he wore cost $5,000. It was a gift from Rich Harrington. My son looked like a stranger. Brittany stood next to him. My new daughter-in-law. She was beautiful in a sharp, terrifying way. She looked at Brandon with expectation. She looked at the crowd with triumph. She did not look at us. Not once. "Thank you all for coming," Brandon said into the microphone. His voice was smooth. It was the voice of a marketing director who knew how to sell a lie. "Tonight is the happiest night of my life," he continued. "Not just because I married the woman of my dreams, but because I am finally coming home." I frowned. Coming home. What did that mean? "I grew up in a small house," Brandon said. His tone dropped. He made it sound like a tragedy. He made it sound like he grew up in a gutter. "My parents were simple people. They worked with their hands. They lived small lives. They were content with mediocrity." A murmur went through the crowd. I felt the blood drain from my face. Alice squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. "But I always wanted more," Brandon said. His voice grew louder. "I always felt like I was meant for something bigger." When I met Brittany, I realized what I was missing. I realized that names carry power. Names carry history. The name Bennett has always felt like a cage to me. It is a name of grease and sweat and small paychecks. The room was deadly silent now. The waiters stopped moving. Rich Harrington was leaning forward with a wide grin. "So tonight," Brandon declared, raising his glass, "I want to make a special announcement. As a wedding gift to my beautiful wife and to her incredible parents who have welcomed me as a son, I have decided to leave the past behind. As of tomorrow morning, I am no longer Brandon Bennett. I am legally taking the name Harrington. I am Brandon Harrington." The applause started from the head table. Rich and Susan Harrington stood up and clapped furiously. Then Brittany's friends joined in. Then the business associates. Soon the whole room was a thunder of applause. They were cheering. They were cheering for a son erasing his father. I sat frozen. I felt like someone had reached into my chest and pulled out my lungs. I looked at Alice. She was gasping. Her hand flew to her chest. Her face turned a terrifying shade of gray. "Alice," I shouted. I stood up and knocked over my chair. It made a loud crash. The applause faltered. People turned to look at table 24. They looked at the old mechanic in the cheap tuxedo and his sick wife. Brandon looked at us. He did not look concerned. He looked annoyed. Brittany grabbed the microphone. Her voice was sharp and amplified by the speakers. "Oh, do not worry, everyone," she said. She rolled her eyes. "It is just a little drama. They always do this. Do not let their poverty ruin the party." Laughter. A ripple of laughter went through the room. That broke me. That was the moment the camel's back snapped. I did not scream. I did not fight. I moved with a cold precision I used when I fixed a delicate engine. I reached into the inner pocket of my jacket. I pulled out an envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $10,000. It was the absolute last of our liquidity. It was the money for our food for the next year. It was our survival. I had brought it as a wedding gift because I was a fool. I looked at the check. I looked at Brandon. He was smiling at his new family. He was a Harrington now. Harringtons did not need $10,000 from a mechanic. I walked toward the trash can near the kitchen door. It was an open bin filled with discarded shrimp tails and used napkins. I held the check up. I made sure Brandon saw me. Our eyes locked across the room. For a second, his smile wavered. He saw the check. He knew what it was. I crumpled it into a ball. I dropped it into the garbage. Then I turned to Alice. "Come on, Alice. We are leaving." She nodded weakly. I helped her stand. She leaned her entire weight on me. We walked out of the ballroom. We walked past the table of wedding favors we had paid for. We walked past the ice sculpture we had paid for. We walked out of the hotel and into the cold Boston night. Behind us, the music started again. The party continued. My son was celebrating his new name. He had no idea what he had just thrown away. We did not have a car waiting. We had sold my truck 3 weeks ago to pay the florist. We stood on the curb of Copley Square, shivering in the wind. The valets looked at us with suspicion. We did not look like guests who belonged at the Fairmont. We looked like the help. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking, not from cold, but from rage. I opened the Uber app. The surge pricing was high. It would cost $45 to get back to our small house in the suburbs. I checked my bank balance. $412. That was it. That was the sum total of George Bennett's life. I booked the ride. Alice leaned against a concrete planter. Her breathing was shallow. "I am sorry, George," she whispered. "I am so sorry." "Do not apologize," I said. My voice was hard. "Do not ever apologize for him again. He is dead to us, Alice. He died in that ballroom." She started to cry. Soft, quiet tears. The tears of a mother who knows she has failed even though she gave everything. The car arrived. It was a beat-up Honda Civic. It smelled of stale cigarettes and pine air freshener. It was a fitting carriage for our humiliation. We sat in the back seat in silence. The driver tried to make small talk about the Red Sox. I did not answer. I watched the city lights fade into the darkness of the highway. We drove for 40 minutes. We left the skyscrapers and the luxury. We entered our neighborhood. The streetlights were dim here. The sidewalks were cracked. We pulled up to our house. It was a small ranch-style house built in the 70s. The paint was peeling on the siding. The gutters were sagging. I knew the furnace was making a rattling noise that meant it would die this winter. I knew the roof leaked over the garage. I looked at the house and I felt a wave of shame. This was why Brandon hated us. This house was his embarrassment. He looked at this house and saw failure. I looked at this house and saw a mortgage paid off with sweat. I saw a home where we never went hungry. But to a Harrington, this was a hovel. I helped Alice inside. The house was cold. We had turned the thermostat down to 55 degrees to save money on oil. I settled Alice onto the sofa. I covered her with 2 blankets. "I will make you tea," I said. I went to the kitchen. The linoleum was curling at the edges. I filled the kettle. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text message from Brandon. I stared at the screen. The name on the contact still said Brandon's son. "Dad, you really embarrassed me tonight," the message read. "Did you have to make a scene? Did you have to stomp out like a child? Brittany is very upset. I hope you and Mom took an Uber. Do not expect me to drive out there to bring you the centerpieces. My car is full of gifts." I read it twice. He did not ask if his mother was okay. He did not ask why we left. He worried about the centerpieces. He worried about his car. I did not reply. I deleted the contact name. I changed it to Brandon Harrington. Then I blocked the number. I brought the tea to Alice. She drank it with shaking hands. Her color was coming back a little. She was a strong woman. She had survived worse than this. But a betrayal by a child cuts deeper than any surgery. We sat in the silence of our cold living room. On the coffee table there was a pile of mail. We had neglected it for a week because we were so busy with the wedding preparations. It was a stack of misery: electric bill, water bill, medical co-pays. I picked up the stack to sort it. I needed to distract myself. I needed to see how much ruin we were truly in. Bill. Bill. Junk mail. Bill. Then I stopped. At the bottom of the pile was a thick envelope. It was heavy. It was made of expensive cream-colored paper. It looked out of place among the cheap window envelopes of the utility companies. I looked at the return address. Sterling and Associates, Attorneys at Law, 500 Fifth Avenue, New York. I frowned. I did not know any lawyers in New York. I flipped the envelope over. It was addressed to Mr. George Bennett, personal and confidential. I opened it. I used a dull knife from the kitchen. Inside was a letter printed on heavy bond paper. There was also a certified copy of a death certificate. I read the first paragraph. Dear Mr. Bennett, we are writing to inform you of the passing of Mr. Silas Bennett of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. As the executor of the Bennett Family Trust, we have been trying to locate you for 3 months. Silas Bennett, my father. I dropped the letter on the table. My hands went numb. Alice looked up. What is it, George? Is it another bill? No. I whispered. It is my father. He died. Alice knew the story. Everyone knew the story. I ran away from home when I was 18. My father was a tyrant. He was a steel magnate who believed that kindness was a weakness. He beat me. He belittled me. He tried to break me. So I left. I changed my middle name. I moved to Boston. I became a mechanic. I never took a dime from him. I never spoke to him again. I preferred poverty to his cruelty. I picked up the letter again. I continued reading. My brother William had died 5 years ago in a boating accident. William had no children. My mother had passed decades ago. The letter continued. According to the last will and testament of Silas Bennett, the entire estate was to be held in trust until his death. Since you are the sole surviving biological child, you are the primary beneficiary. I stopped breathing. I looked at the numbers on the second page. They were bold and black. The estate includes liquid assets totaling $10 million after federal and state taxes. It also includes controlling shares in Bennett Steel Industries, valued at approximately $50 million. $10 million. I looked around my living room. I looked at the peeling paint. I looked at the blanket covering my wife. I looked at the empty spot where my retirement savings used to be. There was more. A final paragraph. However, Mr. Silas Bennett included a specific lineage clause in the trust. The assets are to be distributed solely to individuals who legally bear the surname Bennett. This clause was created to ensure the legacy of the family name. I read it again. Legally bear the surname Bennett. I looked at my phone. I looked at the blocked number of Brandon Harrington. My son had stood on a stage 2 hours ago. He had told 300 people he hated the name Bennett. He had signed legal documents to change it. He had mocked the very thing that was about to make him a king. A laugh bubbled up in my throat. It was a dry, dark sound. What is it? George Alice asked. She was scared now. I handed her the letter. Read it, Alice, I said. Read it and tell me if I am dreaming. She put on her reading glasses. She read silently. Her lips moved. Then she gasped. She looked at me. Her eyes were wide. George, she whispered. $10 million. Yes, I said. And Brandon, she asked. She looked at the clause. I stood up. I walked to the window. I looked out at the dark street. Brandon just made the most expensive speech in history, I said. He threw us away, Alice. He threw away the name. He wanted to be a Harrington. He wanted their money. He wanted their prestige. Well, he got the name. I turned back to my wife. Tomorrow morning, a lawyer named Leonard Sterling is coming here. He is flying in from New York. Alice sat up straight. She pushed the blanket aside. The shock seemed to have revived her. What are we going to do, George? I walked over to the trash can in the kitchen. I looked at the empty space where the check for $10,000 would have been if I hadn't thrown it away at the hotel. We are going to do nothing, I said. Nothing. We are going to let Brandon enjoy his new life, I said. He wanted to be independent. He wanted to be superior. We will let him think he won. We will let him think we are destitute. We will let him come to us when the Harringtons realize he is useless. I picked up the letter. I folded it carefully. I put it back in the envelope. And when he comes back, I said, my voice low and steady, I will show him exactly what the name Bennett is worth. The next morning, the sun rose over a different world. The house was still cold. The roof still leaked, but the air felt different. It felt charged. At 9 o'clock, a black sedan pulled up to our curb. It was a Lincoln. It looked out of place next to my neighbor's rusted pickup truck. A man stepped out. He was tall and thin. He wore a suit that cost more than my house. He carried a leather briefcase. He walked up our cracked walkway without looking down. I opened the door before he knocked. "Mr. Bennett," he asked. His voice was like dry ice. "I am George Bennett. I am Leonard Sterling. May I come in?" He entered our living room. He did not grimace at the smell of old carpet. He sat on our sagging sofa. He placed the briefcase on the coffee table. He opened it. The interior was lined with velvet. He pulled out a stack of documents. "Mr. Bennett," "Will be brief," he said. "Your father was a difficult man, but he was efficient. The transfer of funds is ready. I just need to verify your identity and your current legal name." I handed him my driver's license. He checked it. He nodded. "And do you have any children?" he asked. I paused. I looked at Alice. She was holding her breath. "I have a son," I said. "Brandon." Leonard Sterling pulled out a pen. "And does Brandon bear the surname Bennett?" I looked the lawyer in the eye. "As of last night," I said. "My son publicly announced he has changed his name to Harrington. He has filed the paperwork with the courts." Leonard Sterling stopped writing. He looked up. His expression did not change, but his eyes sharpened. "Is that so?" he said. "Yes," I said. "Then under the terms of the Silas Bennett Trust," Leonard said, closing the file, "your son is legally considered deceased for the purpose of this inheritance. He is disinherited." I nodded. "Good," I said. Leonard Sterling looked at me. For the first time he smiled. It was a shark's smile. "I think we are going to get along very well, Mr. Bennett," he said. "Now let's discuss how you would like to receive your $10 million. I sat back in my chair. I thought about the wedding. I thought about the laughter. I thought about Brittany's sneer. "Mr. Sterling," I said, "I want it all in a trust. I want it hidden. I want no one to know I have this money. Not yet." "Why?" he asked. "Because I want to see how far they will go," I said. "My son thinks I am a poor old man. I want to see how he treats a poor old man before he finds out that man owns the ground he walks on." Leonard Sterling nodded. "The silent approach," he said. "Very wise." He slid a document across the table. "Sign here, Mr. Bennett, and welcome to the rest of your life." I signed. The ink was black and permanent. The game had begun. Brandon Harrington had fired the first shot, but he had no idea I had just bought the whole battlefield. Leonard Sterling sat on my sagging beige sofa like a king sitting on a crate. He did not fidget. He did not look at the water stain on the ceiling. He simply laid out the documents on the scratched coffee table with the precision of a surgeon preparing for an operation. The paper was thick and creamy. It smelled of expensive ink and old libraries. It smelled like my father, Silas Bennett. The name was typed at the top of every page in bold black letters. Just seeing it made my jaw clench. I had not spoken that name in 50 years. I had buried it deep under layers of engine grease and hard work. I left Pittsburgh when I was 20 years old. It was a rainy Tuesday. My father had ordered me to fire a man named Miller. Miller had lost 3 fingers in the rolling mill. My father said he was useless now. He said paying him disability was a sign of weakness. He told me to cut him loose. I refused. My father struck me. He told me I did not have the stomach for business. He told me I was soft. So I packed a single duffel bag. I took $50 from my dresser. I walked out the front door of his mansion, and I never looked back. I hitchhiked to Boston. I changed my life. I became a mechanic. I built a life where I could look myself in the mirror. I thought I was free of him. I thought he was just a ghost story I never told my son. But Silas Bennett was not the kind of man who stayed dead. Even from the grave, he was reaching out. He was trying to control one last thing. Sterling cleared his throat. The sound was dry and sharp. "Mr. Bennett," he said, "your father was a complicated man, but he was effective. He built Bennett Steel into a titan of industry. When your brother William passed away 5 years ago, your father was devastated. He spent the last years of his life consolidating his assets. He liquidated the majority of his real estate holdings. He moved everything into the Bennett family trust." I nodded. I did not trust my voice yet. Alice was sitting beside me. Her hand was gripping my knee. Her knuckles were white. She knew the stories. She knew the scars on my back came from his belt. She was terrified. Sterling turned a page. He pointed to a column of figures. "Let us discuss the assets," he said. "The trust is divided into 2 primary categories. First, we have the liquid assets: cash, bonds, treasury notes. After federal estate taxes and the settlement of all outstanding debts, the total liquid value sits at $10 million. $10 million. The words hung in the cold air of my living room. I looked at the peeling wallpaper in the corner. I looked at the drafty window sealed with duct tape. $10 million. It was an abstract concept. It was not real money. Real money was the $20 in my wallet. Real money was the electric bill I was afraid to open. $10 million was a weapon. Sterling continued. Second, we have the equity, controlling shares in Bennett Steel Industries. The board has already approved a buyout offer from a competitor. The estimated value of those shares is $50 million. However, that transaction will take 6 months to finalize. For now, you have immediate access to the $10 million. I felt Alice's grip tighten. She made a small sound in her throat. It sounded like a whimper. $60 million. My father had left me $60 million. The man who told me I was worthless. The man who said I would die in a gutter. He had left me everything. Why, I asked. My voice was raspy. It sounded like gravel. Why me? He hated me. Sterling looked at me over the rim of his glasses. His eyes were gray and unreadable. He did not hate you, Mr. Bennett. He was disappointed in you. There is a difference. But above all else, Silas Bennett believed in blood. He believed in the name. You are the last Bennett. You are the only one left to carry the weight. He turned another page. This page had a paragraph highlighted in yellow marker. This brings us to the conditions Sterling said. The trust is not without strings. Your father wanted to ensure his legacy survived. He included a specific clause regarding the distribution of funds. We call it the name clause. Read it, I said. Sterling lifted the paper. He read aloud. His voice was monotone. The assets of the Bennett Family Trust are to be distributed solely to the direct biological descendants of Silas Bennett. However, as a condition of this inheritance, the beneficiary must legally bear the surname Bennett at the time of distribution. Furthermore, any descendant who has voluntarily renounced, changed, or legally abandoned the Bennett surname for any reason other than traditional marriage is hereby irrevocably disqualified from the trust. They shall be treated as predeceased. The room went silent. The only sound was the ticking of the cheap plastic clock on the wall. Irrevocably disqualified. Treated as predeceased. I closed my eyes. I saw the ballroom again. I saw the chandeliers. I saw my son Brandon standing on the stage. I saw his smile. I heard his voice booming over the speakers. I have decided to leave the past behind. I am no longer Brandon Bennett. I am Brandon Harrington. He had said it with such pride. He had said it to hurt me. He had said it to distance himself from my poverty. He had wanted to be a Harrington. He wanted the prestige of his wife's family. He wanted to be a big man. And in doing so, he had slit his own throat. He had done it publicly. He had filed the court papers. Sterling had confirmed it before he even walked in my door. My son had legally killed his own inheritance. I opened my eyes. I looked at the lawyer. "Does he know?" I asked. Sterling shook his head. "No. We have not contacted your son. We located you first. As the primary beneficiary, the discretion is yours. However, the clause is self-executing. Even if you wanted to give him a share of the trust directly, the board would block it. The money is yours, George. Yours alone. Brandon Harrington is a stranger to this document." I looked at Alice. She was crying silently. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She was not crying for the money. She was crying for the tragedy of it. She was crying because she knew what this meant. Our son had sold his birthright for a round of applause. "George," she whispered, "we have to tell him. We have to warn him. Maybe he can change it back." I looked at her. I loved her more than anything in this world. She was the one who bandaged my hands when I came home bleeding from the shop. She was the one who stretched a pot of stew to last 3 days. She had a heart of gold, but she was soft. She would forgive him. She would hand him the money and he would take it. He would take it and he would laugh at us. He would put us in a nursing home and he would spend the millions on cars and vacations with the Harringtons. "No," I said. Alice blinked. "What?" "No," I repeated. "We do not tell him." Sterling watched me. He did not look surprised. He looked interested. "Mr. Sterling," I said, "I want you to set up the account. I want the 10 million transferred today. But I want it quiet. I want it in a blind trust. No press releases, no public announcements. I want to see something." "What do you want to see, George?" Alice asked. I stood up. I walked to the window. I looked at the rusted mailbox at the end of the driveway. "My son thinks we are dirt," I said. "He thinks we are nothing. He changed his name because he was ashamed of us. He thinks the Harringtons are his saviors. He thinks they are better than us because they have money." I turned back to the room. "I want to see how he treats us now," I said. "I want to see how he treats us when he thinks we have nothing left to give. He drained my savings. He humiliated us in public. Now he is going to come back. I know him. He will come back to twist the knife. He will come back to demand more. He will want this house. He will want the land. He will try to squeeze the last drop of blood from this stone." I leaned over the table. I looked Sterling in the eye. "Let him do it," I said. "Let him try. I want to see his face when he realizes he is standing on a trapdoor. I want him to feel the fall." Sterling nodded slowly. A small smile touched his lips. It was a cold smile, a Bennett smile. "The silent test," he said. "It is brutal. It is efficient. Your father would have approved." "I do not care what my father would have approved," I said. "I am not doing this for Silas. I am doing this for dignity. I am doing this because for 30 years I taught that boy to be a man. I taught him honor. I taught him loyalty. And he threw it in the trash for a shiny new last name." I sat back down. I picked up the pen. It felt heavy in my hand. I signed the papers. George Bennett. The name looked strong on the paper. It looked expensive. Alice watched me. She wiped her tears. She sat up straighter. She saw the look in my eye. She knew that look. It was the look I had when I fixed an engine that everyone else said was broken. It was the look of a man who was done being pushed around. "Okay, George," she said softly. "Okay. We wait." Sterling gathered the papers. He placed them back in the velvet-lined briefcase. He snapped the locks shut. "I will handle the transfer immediately," he said. "You will have access to the funds by noon. I will also arrange for a secure phone line and a new debit card to be delivered by courier. The black card, unlimited limit." I nodded. "One more thing," Sterling said, standing up. He smoothed his suit jacket. "The Harringtons. They are clients of a rival firm. They are leveraged, heavily. They project wealth, but their foundation is shaky. If you ever decide to acquire their debt, it could be arranged." I looked at him. This lawyer was a weapon, and I had just bought him. "Not yet," I said. "Let them enjoy the party. The hangover is coming." Sterling left. The black Lincoln pulled away from the curb. The neighborhood was quiet again. A dog barked in the distance. I looked at Alice. She looked at me. We were sitting in a cold house with peeling paint and a dying furnace. But we were sitting on $10 million. The phone rang. I looked at the caller ID. It was Brandon Harrington. I let it ring. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. He was calling to complain. He was calling to yell at us for leaving the wedding. He was calling to tell us how great the Harringtons were. Let him talk to the machine. I had work to do. I had a trap to set. And for the first time in 50 years, I did not feel poor. I felt dangerous. 2 weeks after the wedding, a Porsche Cayenne pulled into my driveway. It was black and shiny, and it looked like a shark swimming in a pond of goldfish. It blocked my view of the street. It blocked the morning sun. I was sitting on the porch drinking coffee from a chipped mug. Alice was inside folding laundry. I watched the driver's door open. Brandon stepped out. He was tan. He looked like a man who had spent 2 weeks on a beach in Aruba drinking rum that cost $20 a glass. He wore a linen shirt and loafers with no socks. He looked like a Harrington. Brittany stepped out of the passenger side. She wore oversized sunglasses and held a designer bag away from her body, as if she were afraid my lawn might infect it. She scanned the neighborhood. She curled her lip. She looked at the peeling paint on my siding and shook her head. They walked up the driveway. They did not wave. They did not smile. They walked like land developers inspecting a demolition site. I did not stand up. I took a sip of coffee. It was lukewarm. "Hey, Dad," Brandon said. He stopped at the bottom of the steps. He did not come up to the porch. He maintained a distance. "Hello, Brandon. Is Mom here?" "We need to talk to both of you." "She is inside," I said. "Get her," Brandon said. "This is important. It is a business opportunity." I looked at him. He was commanding me. He was 32 years old, and he had never changed a tire in his life, but he was commanding me in my own house. I stood up slowly. My knees popped. I went inside and called Alice. She came out wiping her hands on her apron. When she saw Brandon, her face lit up. She still had hope. She still thought the wedding was just a mistake. She thought he was here to apologize. "Brandon," she said, "you look good. How was the honeymoon?" "We have no time for small talk, Mom," Brandon said. He walked past me and entered the living room. He did not wipe his feet. Brittany followed him. She stood in the center of the room and refused to sit down. We sat on the sofa, Alice and I, 2 old people in a cold house. Brandon stood by the fireplace. He looked at the family photos on the mantel. He turned one face down. "Here is the situation," Brandon said. Rich Harrington, my father-in-law, has offered me a buy-in on his next project. It is a luxury condo complex in Seaport. It is a guaranteed return, 300% in 2 years. It is the chance of a lifetime. That sounds nice for you, Brandon, I said. It is nice, Brandon said. But there is a buy-in fee. I need capital. I need $200,000 by Friday to secure my equity stake. I looked at him. I had $10 million sitting in a blind trust account that Leonard Sterling had opened for me days ago. I could write a check for $200,000 and not even notice. I could buy the whole condo complex. But Brandon did not know that. Brandon thought I had $400. I do not have $200,000, son, I said. You know that. I spent everything on your wedding. Brandon sighed. He looked at Brittany. She rolled her eyes. We know you do not have cash, George, Brittany said. She used my first name. She had never called me Dad. She barely called me George. Usually she called me nothing. We know you are liquid poor, but you are sitting on an asset. She pointed a manicured finger at the floor. This house, she said. I looked at the floor. The carpet was worn. What about it? I asked. The market is hot, Dad, Brandon said. Zillow estimates this lot is worth $280,000, mostly for the land. The house is a teardown, obviously, but the land has value. I felt Alice stiffen beside me. You want us to sell our house? Alice whispered. We do not want you to sell it, Mom, Brandon said. We need you to sell it. We need the equity. Rich says if I bring this capital, I am made partner. This is my future. This is the Harrington legacy. And where will we live? Alice asked. Her voice was trembling. Brittany pulled a brochure from her bag. She tossed it onto the coffee table. It slid across the wood and stopped in front of me. Sunny Acres Assisted Living, Brittany said. It is in New Hampshire. It is very affordable. They accept state aid. You would be comfortable there. You would not have to worry about maintenance or heating bills. It is really the responsible choice at your age. I looked at the brochure. It showed old people in wheelchairs staring at a television. It was a warehouse for the dying. It was 2 hours away. You want to put us in a home, I said. It is a community, Brittany corrected. And frankly, George, you are being selfish. You are sitting on capital that could launch Brandon's career. You are hoarding resources you do not need. You are 2 people in a 3-bedroom house. It is wasteful. I looked at Brandon. I waited for him to defend us. I waited for him to say that this was the house where he grew up. This was the house where I built him a treehouse. This was the house where Alice nursed him through the flu. Brandon looked at me. His eyes were cold. She is right, Dad, he said. You are barely scraping by. The furnace is dying. The roof leaks. You cannot afford this place. If you sell it now and give me the money, I can invest it. I will pay for your room at Sunny Acres. It is a win-win. It is not a win for us, I said. This is our home. It is a rotting box, Brittany snapped. Listen to me. Rich Harrington does not wait. This deal closes Friday. If you do not sell, we lose the spot. Do you want to be the reason your son fails? Do you want to be the anchor around his neck? I looked at Brittany. She was 28 years old. She had never worked a day in her life. She was wearing shoes that cost more than my mortgage payment, and she was calling me an anchor. Why does Rich Harrington not lend you the money? I asked. Because he wants to see skin in the game, Brandon said. He wants to see that I am committed. He wants to see that I can mobilize assets. He wants to see that I am a Harrington. You are a Bennett, I said. Not anymore, Brandon said. He pulled a document from his jacket pocket. It was a court order. My name change was approved this morning, he said. I am Brandon Harrington. And as a Harrington, I do not accept mediocrity. He threw the paper on the table. It landed on top of the nursing home brochure. I looked at the paper. It was official. It had a seal. It was the final nail in his coffin. He had legally disinherited himself. He had cut the cord. Alice began to cry. She put her face in her hands. "Stop the drama, Mom," Brandon said. "It is just a name. And it is just a house. You need to be practical. You need to stop holding me back." Brittany stepped forward. She loomed over us. "Look," she said. "We are not asking. We are telling you what needs to happen. You are old. You are failing. If you do not do this voluntarily, we can call Adult Protective Services. We can say you are unable to care for yourselves. We can say the house is a hazard. We can force a sale." She smiled. It was a reptile smile. "Or you can sign the agreement Brandon brought, and we can do this the easy way." I looked at Brandon. "You would call the state on us?" I asked. "I will do what is necessary to secure my future," Brandon said. I looked at the document he was holding. It was a single page. It was typed. "What is that?" I asked. "It is a binding letter of intent," Brandon said. "It states that you agree to list the property for sale immediately, and that the proceeds will be transferred to me for investment purposes. It gives me power of attorney over the real estate transaction." I reached out my hand. "Let me see it." Brandon handed me the paper. I read it. It was poorly written. It was predatory. It gave him total control. It stripped us of everything. If I signed this, I would be homeless. If I signed this, I would be at his mercy. But I knew something he did not know. I knew that yesterday Leonard Sterling had filed a deed transfer. I had moved the house into the Bennett family trust. Technically, I did not own this house anymore. The trust owned it. My signature on this document was legally worthless. It could not transfer the title. But it was evidence. It was proof of coercion. It was proof of elder abuse. It was proof of greed. I looked at Alice. I saw the fear in her eyes. She thought we were trapped. She thought we had to obey. I looked at Brandon. He was checking his watch. He was bored. "Okay," I said. Alice gasped. "George, no!" I squeezed her knee. I silenced her with a look. "Okay," I repeated. "I will sign." Brandon blinked. He looked surprised. "You will?" "Yes," I said. "You are right. I am old. The roof leaks. I cannot maintain it. If this helps you, I will do it." Brittany clapped her hands. Finally. Some sense. I took a pen from my pocket. It was a cheap ballpoint pen. I smoothed the paper on the coffee table. "But I have one condition," I said. "What condition?" Brittany asked sharply. "I want to stay here for 30 days, I said. "I need time to pack. I need time to say goodbye." "Fine," Brandon said. 30 days. But the sign goes up tomorrow." I bent over the paper. I signed my name. George Bennett. The letters were jagged. I made my hand shake. I made myself look weak. I handed the paper back to Brandon. He snatched it. He looked at the signature. He grinned. "You did the right thing, Dad," he said. He folded the paper and put it in his pocket. "Rich will be impressed." He turned to Brittany. "Let's go. We have a dinner reservation at Grill 23. They walked toward the door. They did not say goodbye to Alice. They did not say thank you. They walked out of our house like they had just taken out the trash. I watched them go. I watched them get into the Porsche. I watched them drive away. Alice turned to me. She was shaking. "George, why did you do that?" she cried. "We have nowhere to go. You gave him the house." I stood up. I walked to the kitchen. I poured the rest of the coffee down the sink. I did not give him the house, Alice, I said. I gave him a rope. What do you mean the house belongs to the trust, I said. I transferred it yesterday. That piece of paper he has is worthless. It is invalid. When he tries to use it, the title company will laugh at him. Alice stared at me. Then why sign it? Because I needed him to commit the crime, I said. I needed him to put it in writing that he was forcing us out. I needed him to think he had won. I walked back to the living room. I picked up the brochure for Sunny Acres. I crumpled it in my fist. He threatened us, Alice. He threatened to call the state. He threatened to declare us incompetent. He brought his wife here to insult you in your own home. I threw the crumpled brochure into the fireplace. He thinks he is going to sell this house on Friday. He thinks he is going to take the money to Rich Harrington. He thinks he is going to be a partner. I turned to Alice. My voice was low. On Friday, he is going to find out that he sold a house he does not own. On Friday, he is going to look like a fraud in front of the Harringtons. And when he comes back here screaming, I am going to have the police waiting. Alice wiped her eyes. She looked at the empty spot where the Porsche had been. He is really gone, isn't he, George? My son is gone. Yes, I said. The boy we raised is gone. That man in the Porsche is a stranger. And strangers do not get to threaten my wife. I took out my phone. I dialed a number. Mr. Sterling, I said. Yes, Mr. Bennett. They were just here. They forced me to sign a document under duress. They threatened to put us in a state home. I heard the lawyer typing in the background. Did you sign it? Sterling asked. I did. Good, Sterling said. That constitutes fraud and attempted grand larceny. We will add it to the file. Do you want to proceed with the eviction protection? No, I said. Not yet. Let him try to list it. Let him hire the realtor. Let him spend the money on the listing. I want him to go all the way to the closing table. Understood, Sterling said. The trap is set. I hung up. The house was quiet. The wind rattled the window frames. It was a poor house, it was a cold house, but it was my house and no one was taking it. I sat back down next to Alice. I put my arm around her. 30 days, I said. We have 30 days to watch them fall. Alice rested her head on my shoulder. You are a scary man, George Bennett, she whispered. I am a father, I said, and sometimes a father has to teach a lesson that words cannot teach. We sat there as the sun went down. We sat in the dark. We did not turn on the lights. We did not need to. We knew exactly where we were. We were in the eye of the storm, and Brandon was sailing straight into the hurricane. The courier truck arrived at 11 in the morning on a Tuesday. It was a rainy day in Boston, the kind of gray, damp weather that makes your bones ache when you are 70 years old. I was in the garage organizing my tools. I did not need to organize them. They were already in perfect order. Every wrench, every screwdriver, every socket had its place on the pegboard. But I needed to keep my hands busy. If my hands were busy, I did not have to think about the for sale sign that Brandon had planted in my front yard 3 days ago. It stood there like a tombstone for my life. The delivery driver ran up the driveway, shielding a flat cardboard package under his jacket. He looked miserable. I met him at the garage door. I signed the digital pad. The stylus felt slippery in my grease-stained fingers. Package for George Bennett, the driver muttered. He did not look me in the eye. He just wanted to get back to his warm truck. I took the package. It was light, but rigid. The return address label was printed in a font I recognized. It was from a high-end stationery store in Back Bay, a place where they sold pens for $500 and paper made of cotton. I carried it into the kitchen. Alice was sitting at the table staring at a cup of tea that had stopped steaming 20 minutes ago. She looked up when I entered. Her eyes were red. She had been crying off and on since the visit. She looked at the package in my hand with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "What is it, George?" she asked. Her voice was thin. It sounded like dry leaves skittering on pavement. "I do not know," I said. I put it on the table. I took my pocket knife and sliced through the packing tape. Inside there was layers of bubble wrap. I peeled them away. Beneath the plastic was a frame. A heavy, expensive frame made of polished mahogany with silver accents. It was the kind of frame you use for a diploma or a Medal of Honor. I turned it over. Behind the glass was a document. It was not a diploma. It was a court order. Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Probate and Family Court. Suffolk Division. I read the bold text in the center. Decree of change of name in the matter of Brandon James Bennett. Ordered that the name of the petitioner be changed to Brandon James Harrington. It was signed by a judge. It was stamped with the official seal of the court. It was dated yesterday. I stared at the paper. It was official. It was legal. It was done. My son had not just talked about it. He had not just shouted it at a wedding to get a reaction. He had gone to a courthouse. He had stood before a judge. He had raised his right hand and sworn that he wanted to erase the name I gave him. He had paid a fee to cut the link between us, and then he had framed it. He had framed his betrayal and mailed it to me. I looked closer. Tucked into the corner of the frame was a small card. It was handwritten in Brandon's neat architectural script. Dad. Thought you would want a keepsake for the mantle. This is what progress looks like. Welcome to the future. Best Brandon Harrington. I felt a cold numbness spread through my chest. It was not anger. Anger is hot. Anger moves fast. This was something else. This was the feeling of watching a ship sink after it has slipped beneath the waves. The finality of it. Alice reached out a trembling hand. She touched the glass. She traced the name Harrington. He really did it, she whispered. He really hates us that much. He does not hate us, Alice, I said. I sat down heavily in the chair opposite her. He hates himself. He hates where he came from. He thinks this piece of paper makes him a king. He thinks this frame changes his blood. Alice pulled her hand back as if the glass had burned her. Why would he send this? She asked. Why would he be so cruel? Because he wants to hurt us, I said. He wants to make sure we know our place. He wants to show us that he won. He got the sign in the yard. He got the agreement signed. And now he has the name. He thinks he has stripped us of everything. I looked at the document again. I looked at the date. October 14th. I looked at the clock on the kitchen wall. It was 11:15. I stood up. I walked to the phone. I picked up the receiver. It felt heavy like a hammer. I dialed a number from memory. It was a number I had only called once before, but I knew I would be calling it often. Leonard Sterling answered on the second ring. Sterling. Miss Sterling. This is George Bennett. Ah, Mr. Bennett. Good morning. To what do I owe the pleasure? I received a package, I said. From my son. Or rather, from the man who used to be my son. There was a pause on the line. I could hear the faint sound of a siren in the background in New York. Go on, Sterling said. He sent me a framed copy of a court order, I said. A decree of change of name. It is official. Suffolk County Probate Court. He is legally Brandon Harrington. The date on the order is yesterday. I heard the sound of a pen scratching on paper. It was a dry scratching sound. You are certain of the date? Sterling asked. I am looking at it, I said. October 14th. And you have the physical document? I do. Excellent, Sterling said. The word hung in the air. It was a cold, professional word. "What does this mean?" I asked. I knew the answer, but I needed to hear him say it. I needed the law to confirm what my heart already knew. "It means the trap is sprung," Mr. Bennett Sterling said. His voice was devoid of emotion. It was pure fact. "The name clause in your father's trust is explicit. It requires the beneficiary to legally bear the surname Bennett at the time of distribution. By legally changing his name, Brandon has voluntarily disqualified himself. He has triggered the disinheritance clause." "So it is final?" I asked. "It is absolute," Sterling said. "Even if you died tomorrow, the trust would bypass him. He is no longer a recognized descendant for the purposes of the estate. He has legally severed his financial artery. He just burned a check for $30 million, and he paid a court filing fee to do it." $30 million. I looked at the frame on the table. I looked at the cheap pine cabinets of my kitchen. "Does he have any recourse?" I asked. "Can he change it back if he finds out?" Sterling chuckled. It was a low, dry sound. "He can try," Sterling said, "but the clause specifies that the name must be continuous. A reinstatement after the fact would be seen as a fraudulent attempt to circumvent the conditions of the trust. We would crush him in probate court." "No, Mr. Bennett. He made his choice. He made it publicly. He made it legally. He made it loudly. There is no going back." I took a deep breath. The air in the kitchen smelled of old tea and lemon cleaner. "Okay," I said. "Do you want me to notify him?" Sterling asked. "Do you want me to send a letter informing him of his forfeiture?" "No," I said quickly. "No, not yet." "Why?" Sterling asked. "Because he is not done," I said. "He changed his name. He put the sign in the yard. But he has not finished the job. He still thinks he is selling my house on Friday. He still thinks he is taking my money to Rich Harrington." I looked at Alice. She was staring out the window at the rain. She looked small. She looked broken. "I want him to walk into that closing on Friday," I said. "I want him to sit at the table with the Harringtons. I want him to feel like he owns the world. And then I want to pull the rug out." "I understand," Sterling said. "The closing is scheduled for Friday at 2 o'clock. I have already been contacted by the title company. They saw the deed transfer to the trust. They are confused. I told them to hold off on notifying the listing agent. I told them the seller would clarify everything at the table." "You are coming to the closing?" I asked. "I wouldn't miss it," Sterling said. "I will bring the trust documents. I will bring the copy of his name change decree. We will put them side by side on the table. It will be a very educational afternoon for young Mr. Harrington." "Thank you, Leonard," I said. We hung up. I walked back to the table. I picked up the frame. It was heavy. It was solid. I walked to the trash can. I thought about throwing it away. I thought about smashing the glass and shredding the paper. It would have felt good. It would have been a release, but I did not. I walked into the living room. I placed the frame on the mantel right next to the photo of Brandon graduating from college. In that photo, he was wearing a cap and gown. He was smiling. He was a Bennett then. I put the name change decree next to it. Alice walked in. She saw what I had done. "Why, George," she asked. "Why would you put that up there?" "It is an insult." "No, Alice," I said. "It is not an insult. It is a reminder." "A reminder of what?" "A reminder of who he is," I said. "When he comes back here crying. When he comes back here begging for money. When he realizes the Harringtons only loved him for what they thought he could give them. I want him to look at that mantle. I want him to see that he did this. I did not disinherit him, Alice. He disinherited himself. He framed it. He sent it to us." I touched the silver edge of the frame. "He wanted to be a Harrington," I said softly. Now he gets to be a Harrington, for better or for worse. And starting Friday, it is going to be for worse. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text message. From Brandon Harrington. Hope you got the package, Dad. It is official. The sign looks good in the yard. Realtors are already calling. Pack your boxes. We are moving fast. I read the message. I did not reply. I put the phone away. I looked around the living room. I looked at the old sofa. I looked at the worn rug. Pack your boxes, he said. I walked to the closet. I pulled out a suitcase. Are we packing, George? Alice asked. Her voice was fearful. Are we really leaving? Yes, Alice, I said. We are packing. She started to cry again. Where are we going? Sunny Acres. I went to her. I held her shoulders. I looked into her eyes. No, Alice, I said. We are not going to a nursing home. We are going to pack for a vacation. A vacation? Yes, I said. I think it is time we saw Italy. You always wanted to see Italy. But we have no money, she said. We have $400. I smiled. It was a genuine smile. For the first time in weeks, I felt light. We have plenty of money, Alice. We have more money than the Harringtons. We have more money than God. And on Friday, after we finish with Brandon, we are going to the airport. She looked at me like I was crazy, but she saw the strength in my face. She saw the man she married 40 years ago. Okay, George, she whispered. Italy. I went back to the closet. I started taking down our coats. Brandon Harrington had changed his name. He had signed his papers. He thought he was writing the story of his success. He did not know he had just written the first chapter of his tragedy. And I was the editor. And I was about to use a very red pen. The text message arrived on Wednesday afternoon. It was from Brandon. It was short. It was a command, not an invitation. Come to the Harrington estate at 7 o'clock tonight. We are celebrating the name change. Dress appropriately. Try not to embarrass me. I looked at the message. I looked at Alice. She was ironing a shirt I had bought at Sears 10 years ago. It was the best shirt I owned. She looked tired, but she had a spark in her eye. She knew what we were doing. She knew we were walking into the lion's den one last time. We are going, I said. Alice nodded. She put the iron down. She smoothed the collar. Why, George, she asked, why do we have to endure them again? Because I want to see it, I said. I want to see them at their peak. I want to see them gloat. I want to remember their faces when they think they have won. It will make Friday sweeter. I went to the bedroom. I opened the closet. I reached into the back. There was a box there. Inside the box was a bottle of wine. I had bought it yesterday with the debit card Leonard Sterling had sent via courier. The card was heavy and black. The limit was non-existent. I had walked into the finest wine merchant in Boston. I had asked for something specific. I asked for a 1982 Chateau Petrus. The clerk had looked at my grease-stained hands. He had hesitated. Then I showed him the card. His attitude changed instantly. The bottle cost $5,200. It was dusty. It looked old. To an untrained eye, it looked like something you found in a basement. I put the bottle in a brown paper grocery bag. It was a deliberate choice. I wanted it to look humble. I wanted them to judge the package, not the contents. We drove to Weston. The Harrington estate was a monstrosity of new money. It had columns that were too big. It had a fountain that sprayed water 10 feet into the air. It had a driveway paved with imported stone. When I pulled my rusted Honda Civic up to the front entrance, the valet looked at me with open disgust. He was a young kid in a red vest. He waved his hand, shooing me away. "Deliveries in the back, old man," he shouted. I rolled down the window. "I am the father of the guest of honor," I said. The valet sneered. He looked at my car. He looked at the oil stain on the driveway. "Park it yourself," he said. "Around the side. Do not block the Bentleys." I parked near the hedges. I helped Alice out. We walked to the massive double doors. I carried the brown paper bag. It crinkled in the silence. The door opened. A maid let us in. The foyer was gold. Everything was gold. The mirror frames, the stair railing, the chandelier. It looked like a casino. It smelled of expensive perfume and arrogance. We walked into the dining room. It was crowded. There were about 30 people. They were all holding crystal glasses. They were all laughing. Brandon was in the center of the room. He was wearing a velvet smoking jacket. He looked ridiculous. He looked like he was playing a character in a movie. Brittany was hanging on his arm. She was wearing diamonds that sparkled aggressively. Rich Harrington saw us first. He was holding a scotch. He was already drunk. "Well, look who it is," he boomed. His voice echoed off the marble floors. "The Bennets. Or should I say, the ancestors." The room went quiet. Everyone turned to look at us. They looked at my Sears shirt. They looked at Alice's simple dress. They looked at the brown paper bag in my hand. Brandon walked over. He did not smile. He looked tense. "Dad," he hissed. "What is that? Why are you carrying a grocery bag?" "It is a gift," I said. "For the celebration." Brandon grabbed my arm. He tried to steer me toward the corner. "Just put it in the kitchen," he whispered. "Do not embarrass me. Rich has senators here. He has investors." "No, son," I said. I pulled my arm away. "I want to give it to the host." I walked past Brandon. I walked straight to Rich Harrington. He watched me come with a smirk on his face. He thought I was a clown. He thought I was entertainment. "Mr. Harrington," I said, "thank you for having us." Rich looked down at me. He was a big man, but he was soft. He had the hands of a man who signed checks, not a man who built things. "George," he said, "glad you could make it. We were just toasting Brandon's upgrade." He laughed at his own joke. The room laughed with him. "Upgrade," I said. "Yes, that is one word for it." I held out the bag. "I brought a bottle," I said, "to celebrate the new name." Rich took the bag. He held it by the rim with 2 fingers as if it were dirty. He looked at the crowd. He winked. "Oh, look at this, everyone," he announced. "George brought us some wine. Let us see what the mechanic recommends." He reached into the bag and pulled out the bottle. The label was simple. It was slightly faded. There was dust on the neck. It did not have gold leaf. It did not have a hologram. It just said Petrus 1982. Rich looked at it. He frowned. He did not recognize it. He was a man who drank labels, not wine. He knew brands that advertised in magazines. He did not know history. "Petrus," he read out loud. "Never heard of it." "Looks old, George. Did you find this in your garage?" Laughter rippled through the room. Brittany covered her mouth to hide a giggle. "It is a French wine," I said calmly. "It is from Pomerol." "French," Rich scoffed. "I only drink Napa cabs. Big, bold American wine. This looks thin. Look at the dust. It has probably turned to vinegar." He handed the bottle to a waiter. "Open it," he ordered. "Let us see what Swill George considers a gift." The waiter took the bottle. He looked at the label. His eyes widened. He knew. He looked at me, then he looked at Rich. He hesitated. "Sir," he said softly, "this is a very vintage wine. It should decant for at least an hour. The sediment needs to settle. Rich waved his hand dismissively. Just pour it. It is free booze. Do not make a production out of it. The waiter opened the bottle. He did it carefully. He poured a small amount into Rich's glass. The wine was a deep, rich ruby color. It smelled of dark fruit and earth. It smelled like heaven. Rich swirled it aggressively. He did not look at the color. He did not smell the bouquet. He just threw it back like a shot of tequila. He swallowed. He made a face. He stuck out his tongue. Yuck, he shouted. He slammed the glass down on the table. Sour, he declared. It tastes like dirt. It is spoiled. He turned to me. His face was red with mock outrage. George, are you trying to poison me? This is garbage. It tastes like old socks. Brandon stepped forward. He looked furious. Dad, he said. His voice was tight. Why did you do this? Why did you bring cheap wine to a party like this? You know Rich has a refined palate. You know he only drinks the best. It is not cheap, Brandon, I said. It is in a paper bag, Brandon snapped. It is covered in dust. It is insulting. You are insulting my new family. Brittany chimed in. She walked over and picked up the bottle. She looked at it with disdain. Petrus, she said. What kind of name is that? It sounds like a gas station brand. Seriously, George. If you could not afford a nice bottle, you should have just brought nothing. This is embarrassing. She handed the bottle back to the waiter. Dump it, she said. Get Mr. Harrington a real drink. Open the Camus. The waiter looked at me again. He looked like he wanted to cry. He was holding $5,000 of liquid art, and he was being told to pour it down the drain. Wait, I said. The room went silent. I walked over to the waiter. If you are not going to drink it, I said. I will. Rich laughed. It was a cruel barking sound. By all means, George, he said. Drink your vinegar. Maybe it suits you. You are used to cheap things. I took the glass from the waiter. I poured myself a generous amount. I swirled it gently. I watched the legs of the wine run down the crystal. I lifted it to my nose. I inhaled. It was complex. It was perfect. I took a sip. It was silk. It was the taste of power. It was the taste of patience. I drank it slowly. I savored it while 30 rich fools watched me with pity. I finished the glass. I set it down on the table. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the receipt. I had folded it neatly. I placed the receipt on the table next to the rejected bottle. It is an acquired taste, I said. My voice was steady. It was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the room. Rich looked at the paper. He did not pick it up. He just glanced at it. What is this? He asked. It is the receipt, I said, in case you want to return the rest of the case I bought. Rich picked up the slip. He adjusted his glasses. He read the total. $5,200. He froze. His mouth opened slightly. He looked at the bottle again. He looked at the name. Petrus. He looked at me. His eyes were confused. He could not compute what he was seeing. A mechanic, a rusted car, a $5,000 bottle of wine. Brandon snatched the receipt from Rich's hand. He read it. His face went pale. Dad, he whispered. Where did you get this? Did you steal it? I looked at my son. He was so small. He was standing in a velvet jacket in a gold room surrounded by people who did not know the value of anything. I did not steal it, Brandon, I said. I bought it. I wanted to share the best with you. I wanted to celebrate your new name with something worthy of a king. I looked at Brittany. She was staring at the receipt over Brandon's shoulder. Her expression was blank shock. "But you said it tasted like dirt," I said to Rich. "You said it was garbage." I took Alice's hand. "I guess you were right," I said. "Some things are just too sophisticated for this room." I turned to the waiter. "Cork it," I said. "I am taking it home." The waiter nodded quickly. He recorked the bottle. He put it back in the brown paper bag. He handed it to me with both hands like it was a religious artifact. I took the bag. I looked at the room one last time. They were silent. They were uncomfortable. The dynamic had shifted. For a split second, they were not looking at a poor man. They were looking at a mystery. George Rich stammered. "Wait. If that is real." "It is real, Rich," I said. "But do not worry. I will not force you to drink vinegar. Enjoy your Napa cab. It suits you." I walked out. Alice walked beside me. Her head was high. We walked through the gold foyer. We walked out the big double doors. We walked past the Bentleys and the Porsches to my Honda Civic hidden in the bushes. I put the bottle in the back seat. I opened the door for Alice. "Did you see their faces, George?" she whispered. She was smiling. It was a small, wicked smile. "I saw them," I said. "Where did you get the money, George?" she asked. I started the car. The engine rattled. "It does not matter," I said. "What matters is that they failed the test." "What test?" "The taste test," I said. "They think wealth is shiny. They think wealth is loud. They do not know quality when it hits them in the mouth." I backed out of the driveway. "Friday, Alice," I said. "Friday is the closing. Friday is when Brandon tries to sell our house." "And what happens on Friday?" she asked. I patted the steering wheel. "On Friday, I am going to serve them something much harder to swallow than expensive wine." We drove home in the dark. The bottle of Petrus rolled gently on the back seat. It was safe. It was ours. Back in the mansion, Brandon was probably trying to explain. He was probably telling Rich I was crazy. He was probably saying I charged it to a stolen card. Let them talk. Let them wonder. The vultures had picked at the carcass and found it was made of iron, and on Friday the trap would snap shut. Thursday morning arrived with a silence that felt heavy. It was the kind of silence that comes before a tornado touches down. We were packing. Alice was wrapping her porcelain figurines in old newspaper. Her hands were shaking so bad she dropped a shepherd boy. It shattered on the floor. She started to cry. She cried over a $2 statue because she thought her life was ending. I swept up the pieces. I put them in the trash. "Do not worry, Alice," I said. "We do not need it. We will buy new ones in Florence." She looked at me with red eyes. She wanted to believe me. But belief is hard when your house is full of boxes and your son has sold you down the river. At 10 o'clock, a vehicle pulled up to the curb. It was not a moving truck. It was a white van. It had no windows in the back. On the side, printed in cheerful blue letters, it said, "Sunny Acres Memory Care Transport." I looked out the window. My stomach turned over. Sunny Acres, the nursing home in New Hampshire, the warehouse for the forgotten. Alice saw it too. She grabbed my arm. Her grip was like iron. "George," she whispered, "why is that van here? You said we were going on vacation. You said we were safe." I did not have an answer. Not yet. The doors of the van opened. 2 men stepped out. They were big men. They wore white scrubs that were too tight across their shoulders. They looked like bouncers, not nurses. They walked up the driveway with a purpose. Behind the van, the black Porsche pulled up. Brandon was driving. Brittany was in the passenger seat, applying lipstick in the visor mirror. They got out. Brandon was holding a clipboard. He walked fast. He looked impatient. I opened the front door. I stood on the threshold. I blocked the way. "What is this, Brandon?" I asked. My voice was calm, but my blood was boiling. "This is the solution, Dad," Brandon said. He did not look at me. He looked at the house. He looked at the peeling paint. He looked at his watch. "The closing is tomorrow," he said. "The walk-through is at 4 o'clock today. The house needs to be empty." "We are packing," I said. "We will be out." "You are not moving fast enough," Brandon said. "And frankly, I do not trust you to leave. I do not trust your state of mind." He signaled to the two men in white. They stepped closer. They stood on the bottom step of the porch. They crossed their arms. "State of mind?" I asked. "Yes, Dad," Brandon said. He tapped the clipboard. "You came to a formal dinner last night dressed in rags, holding a bottle of wine that you claimed cost $5,000. You made a scene. You insulted my guests. You are clearly suffering from dementia. You are spending money you do not have on delusions of grandeur." He held up a paper. "I showed the receipt for the wine to a judge this morning," he said. "I showed him the letter you signed agreeing to sell the house. I explained that you are squandering your assets and acting erratically. I explained that Mom is too weak to stop you." I looked at the paper. It was an emergency temporary guardianship order. It was ex parte. That meant he had gone to a judge without me present. He had told a story. He had shown proof of my insanity. And a judge trying to protect a vulnerable senior had signed it. "So you are committing us?" I asked. "I am placing you in a safe environment," Brandon said. "Sunny Acres is expecting you. They have a room ready. It is a secure unit. You will be safe there. You will not be able to hurt yourself or your finances anymore." He turned to the men. "Grab the bags," he ordered, "and help them into the van. If they resist, use restraints. The order authorizes it." Restraints. My son was talking about tying me up. He was talking about strapping his mother to a gurney. Brittany walked up the steps. She stood next to Brandon. She smiled. It was a smile of pure malice. "It is for the best, George," she said. "Really. You will love the bingo nights. And we will take good care of the house money. We will invest it wisely." She tried to step past me into the house. I put out my arm. It was a bar of steel. I blocked her path. "You are not coming in," I said. "Move!" George Brittany snapped. "This is not your house anymore. Brandon is your guardian. He controls the property. He controls you." The two men in white stepped up. One of them reached for me. "Sir, please do not make this difficult," the man said. "We are just doing our job." I looked at the man. I looked at his name tag. It said, Mike. "Mike," I said, "if you touch me, I will break your wrist." Mike stopped. He looked at Brandon. "He is threatening us," Mike Brandon said. "See? Aggressive behavior, typical symptom. Grab him." Mike lunged. He grabbed my arm. I did not break his wrist. I am 70 years old, but I have spent 50 years wrestling with rusted bolts and seized engines. My grip strength is not normal. I grabbed his forearm. I squeezed. I twisted. Mike yelled. He let go. He stumbled back down the steps. "You crazy old man!" he shouted. Alice screamed from inside the house. I turned. The second orderly had gone around the back. He had entered through the kitchen door. He was dragging Alice through the hallway. She was fighting him. She was clawing at his arms. Her face was pale. Her lips were blue. She was having a panic attack. Her heart could not take this. "Let me go!" she screamed. "George, help me!" I roared. It was a sound I did not know I could make. I ran back into the house. I hit the orderly like a linebacker. We crashed into the wall. The drywall cracked. The orderly let go of Alice. He turned on me. He punched me in the chest. It hurt. My ribs ached. But I did not fall. I shoved him toward the door. "Get out," I yelled. "Get out of my house." Brandon ran in. He saw the chaos. He did not help his mother. He did not check on her heart. He pulled out his phone. He started recording. "Look at this," he shouted at the phone. "Look at how violent he is. This is proof. They need to be sedated. Mike, get the sedative." Mike came back in. He was holding a syringe. I backed up. I stood in front of Alice. She was on the floor, gasping for air. She was clutching her chest. "Take it easy, Dad," Brandon said. He was smiling now. He had the footage he needed. "Just let them give you the shot. You will wake up in New Hampshire. It will be peaceful." I looked at him. I looked at the son I had carried on my shoulders. I looked at the boy I had taught to ride a bike. He was gone. There was only a monster left. A monster who wanted my money so badly, he was willing to drug me and lock me away. He thought he had won. He had the order. He had the muscle. He had the syringe. But he made one mistake. He forgot that I had a phone too, and I had a number on speed dial that was more powerful than a syringe. "Back off," I said. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the black smartphone Leonard Sterling had sent me. It was not my old flip phone. It was a secure line. Brandon laughed. "Who are you calling Dad?" he mocked. "The police." "Go ahead. I have a court order. I am your legal guardian. The police will help me load you into the van." I did not answer. I pressed the single button programmed into the phone. It rang once. "Sterling," I said. "Mr. Bennett Leonard." Sterling's voice was crisp and clear. "They are here," I said. "They are in my house. They have a court order for guardianship. They have orderlies with syringes. They are trying to take Alice. She is having a heart episode." I heard the sound of a chair scraping back in New York. I heard the sound of keys typing furiously. "Is your son there?" Sterling asked. "Yes," I said. "He is recording me. He is enjoying it." "Put me on speaker," Sterling said. I pressed the speaker button. I held the phone up like a shield. Brandon laughed again. "Who is that?" he asked. "Your bingo buddy. Mr. Brandon Harrington." Leonard Sterling's voice boomed from the small speaker. It was a voice of absolute authority. It was a voice that stopped the room cold. Brandon stopped laughing. He frowned. "Who is this?" he asked. "My name is Leonard Sterling," Sterling said. "I am the senior partner at Sterling and Associates in New York. I represent the Bennett Family Trust, and I currently represent Mr. George Bennett." "Trust?" Brandon asked. "What trust?" "Mr. Harrington, listen to me very carefully," Sterling said. "You are currently trespassing on private property owned by the Bennett Family Trust. The guardianship order you obtained this morning was based on fraudulent information. I have already filed an emergency motion to stay that order. A judge signed it 2 minutes ago. It has been faxed to the local police precinct." Brandon looked confused. He looked at the paper in his hand. "That is a lie," he said. "I have the order right here. He is incompetent. He bought a $5,000 bottle of wine. He is broke." "He is not broke," Sterling said. His voice was cold steel. "And that wine was purchased with funds from his own account. Funds that are fully legal. Funds that exceed your net worth by a factor of 50. Brandon froze. Brittany stepped into the room. She had heard. "What is he talking about?" she whispered. "I am talking about the fact that George Bennett is the sole beneficiary of an estate valued at $60 million, Sterling said. The silence in the room was absolute. Even Alice stopped gasping. The orderlies lowered their hands. Mike hid the syringe behind his back. $60 million, Brandon whispered. "That is correct," Sterling said. "And you just assaulted a billionaire in his own home." Brandon looked at me. His eyes were wide. He looked at the peeling paint. He looked at my old clothes. He looked at the phone in my hand. "Dad," he said, "is that true?" I did not answer him. I spoke to the phone. "Leonard," I said, "they hurt Alice. They dragged her." "Are the police there yet?" Sterling asked. "I hear sirens," I said. "Good," Sterling said. "Now, Mr. Harrington, I suggest you instruct your hired thugs to step away from my client. If they touch him again, I will not only sue them into poverty, I will have them charged with kidnapping and assault. And as for you, Mr. Harrington, your problems are just beginning." Brandon dropped his clipboard. It hit the floor with a clatter. Brittany grabbed his arm. Her nails dug into his jacket. "He is lying," she hissed. "Look at this place. He is a mechanic. It is a trick." "It is no trick," I said. I looked at the orderlies. "Get out," I said. They did not wait for Brandon's permission. They saw the look in my eye. They heard the sirens getting louder outside. They dropped their hands. They backed out of the room. They ran for the van. I heard the van tires squeal as they peeled out of the driveway. They left Brandon and Brittany stranded in my living room. The sirens were close now. Blue lights flashed through the front window. Brandon looked at me. He looked at the phone. He looked at Alice, who was sitting on the floor, leaning against the wall, catching her breath. "Dad," he said, "why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what I asked?" "That I had money." "Would it have mattered?" "Yes," Brandon said. "Of course it would have mattered. We could have invested it. We could have been partners." I shook my head. "You did not want a partner, Brandon," I said. "You wanted a victim. You wanted to put me in a cage so you could steal my house. You wanted to erase my name." The police pounded on the door. "Police, open up." I looked at Brandon. "Open it," I said. Brandon did not move. He was paralyzed. I walked to the door. I opened it. 2 officers stood there. They looked serious. "We received a call from a New York attorney," the lead officer said, "about an illegal eviction and assault." I pointed at Brandon. "He broke in," I said. "He assaulted my wife. He tried to drug me against my will." The officer looked at Brandon. He looked at the syringe Mike had dropped on the floor in his haste. "Sir, put your hands behind your back," the officer said. Brandon's eyes went wild. "No," he said. "I am his guardian. I have papers." The officer grabbed him. He spun him around. He cuffed him. "We have a stay on that order, sir," the officer said. "And we have a report of assault. You can explain it to the judge." Brittany screamed. "Do not touch him. Do you know who we are? We are Harringtons." I looked at Brittany. "No, you are not," I said. "You are just thieves in expensive shoes." The officers dragged Brandon out. Brittany followed, screaming at them, threatening to sue the department. I watched them go. I watched my son being put into the back of a police car. It should have broken my heart. It should have been the worst moment of my life. But it wasn't. I turned back to Alice. I knelt beside her. I checked her pulse. It was fast, but steady. "Are you okay, Alice?" I asked. She nodded. She took my hand. "George," she whispered, $60 million. "Yes," I said. "And Brandon," she asked, "does he get any of it?" I looked at the door. I looked at the empty space where my son had stood. "No," I said. "He changed his name. Remember, he is a Harrington. Harringtons don't need our money." I helped Alice stand. I walked her to the sofa. "Tomorrow is Friday," I said. "Tomorrow is the closing." "But he is arrested," Alice said. "He will make bail," I said. "Rich Harrington will bail him out. He will tell Rich it was all a misunderstanding. He will tell Rich the sale is still on. He needs that money to pay the lawyer now. I picked up the phone again. Leonard, are you still there? I am here, George. They took him away, I said, but he will be out by morning. I expect so, Sterling said. Good, I said, because I want him at that closing table. I want him to bring Rich Harrington. I want to finish this. I will be there, George, Sterling said. I am flying in tonight. I will meet you at the title company at 2 o'clock. I hung up. I looked around the room. The drywall was cracked. The furniture was old. But the air was clean. The threat was gone. I went to the kitchen. I opened the fridge. I took out a bottle of water. I thought about the van. Sunny Acres. I thought about the syringe. My son had tried to erase me. He had tried to bury me before I was dead. Well, I was not dead. I was alive. And I was about to become the most expensive mistake Brandon Harrington ever made. I sat down at the table. I watched the rain fall outside. Tomorrow, the world would turn upside down. Friday arrived with the weight of a judge's gavel. It was a gray Boston afternoon. The sky was the color of wet concrete. I stood in front of the mirror in my bedroom, adjusting the tie I had worn to my son's wedding. It was the only tie I owned. Alice sat on the edge of the bed. She was dressed in her Sunday best. She looked pale, but her eyes were dry. She was done crying. She was ready to watch the world burn. We drove to the title company in downtown Boston. It was located on the 42nd floor of a glass tower. The view from the conference room windows was spectacular. You could see the harbor. You could see the expensive condos in the Seaport District. You could see the empire Rich Harrington thought he ruled. Leonard Sterling met us in the lobby. He looked like a shark in a three-piece suit. He carried a leather briefcase that looked heavy. He shook my hand. He did not smile. "They are already upstairs," Mr. Bennett Sterling said. "Mr. Harrington brought his own legal counsel. Brandon is with them. He made bail at 6 this morning." I nodded. "How does he look?" "Desperate," Sterling said. We took the elevator up. My stomach did not flutter. I felt a cold calm. I felt like I was walking into a garage to fix a car that everyone else said was totaled. I knew exactly where the broken part was. The conference room was vast. It had a mahogany table long enough to land a plane on. Rich Harrington sat at the head of the table. He was wearing a pinstripe suit. He looked red-faced and angry. Susan sat next to him looking bored. Brittany was checking her phone. And there was Brandon. My son sat on the edge of his chair. He looked terrible. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. He smelled of stale coffee and fear. He saw me walk in and he stood up. He tried to look authoritative, but he just looked shaky. "You showed up," Brandon said. "I thought you would run." I pulled out a chair for Alice. I sat down next to her. Sterling sat next to me. He placed his briefcase on the table. The latch clicked loudly. "I am not the one running, Brandon," I said. Rich Harrington cleared his throat. He slammed a folder shut. "Look, let us get this over with," he barked. "I spent $5,000 bailing this kid out this morning because he told me this deal was solid. I am not happy, George. I am not happy about the wine stunt. I am not happy about the police." He pointed a thick finger at me. "You are going to sign the deed over to Harrington Development. We are going to pay you the $200,000 minus the bail money and legal fees for the assault charge you trumped up. Then you are going to get out of our lives." I looked at Rich. I looked at the man my son wanted to be. "Is that how it works?" I asked. "That is exactly how it works," Rich said. "I have investors waiting. This land is the key to the Seaport expansion. Brandon says you signed the letter of intent. That is a binding contract." Sterling leaned forward. He rested his elbows on the table. He interlaced his fingers. Actually, Mr. Harrington Sterling, said his voice smooth as oil. That letter of intent is what we in the legal profession call a piece of trash. Rich's lawyer, a nervous man with a bad comb-over, shuffled his papers. Now see here, he began. Sterling cut him off. The document was signed under duress, Sterling said. We have witness testimony regarding threats of involuntary commitment. Furthermore, the signatory did not have the authority to sell the property. Brandon slammed his hand on the table. He owns the house, Brandon shouted. He is George Bennett. It is his house, incorrect, Sterling said. He slid a document across the polished wood. The property at 42 Oak Street was transferred into the Bennett Family Trust 48 hours before you forced your father to sign that paper. George Bennett is merely the tenant. The trust is the owner, and as the trustee, I have not authorized any sale. Rich Harrington grabbed the document. He read it. His face turned a darker shade of crimson. He threw the paper at Brandon. You idiot, Rich yelled. You said he owned it. You said it was a done deal. I did not know, Brandon stammered. He looked at me. Dad. Why did you do that? To protect myself from you, I said. Rich stood up. He adjusted his jacket. Fine, he spat. So the deal is dead. The land is locked up in some trust. We will find another lot. Come on, Brandon. You have wasted enough of my time. You are lucky I do not fire you. You are lucky you are married to my daughter. He turned to leave. Brittany stood up, grabbing her purse. Wait, I said. I did not raise my voice. I just spoke. Rich stopped. He turned around. What do you want, George? Do you want to beg? No, I said. I want to talk about the seaport expansion. The project you are betting everything on. Rich laughed. It was a dismissive sound. What do you know about development, George? You change oil filters. Stick to what you know. I know that you are over-leveraged, I said. I know that Harrington Development took out a bridge loan of $12 million to break ground. I know that the loan is due next week. And I know that your primary investor pulled out yesterday because they heard about your son-in-law getting arrested for elder abuse. The room went dead silent. Rich Harrington froze. His eyes darted to his lawyer. The lawyer looked at his shoes. How do you know that? Rich whispered. That is confidential financial information. It is public record if you know where to look, Sterling interjected. Or if you buy the debt. Rich looked at Sterling. Then he looked at me. Buy the debt, he asked. What does that mean? It means Mr. Harrington Sterling said, opening another folder, that your bridge loan was sold this morning. The bank was happy to get it off their books considering your liquidity issues. And who bought it? Rich asked. His voice was trembling now. Sterling pointed a pen at me. My client did, Sterling said. The Bennett Family Trust now holds the note on your entire company. Brandon let out a strangled sound. He looked at me. He looked at the man he had called a failure. Dad, he whispered, that is $12 million. You do not have $12 million. You have $400. I saw your bank app. I stood up. I walked to the window. I looked out at the harbor. I looked at the cranes building the condos that Rich Harrington thought were his. I have a lot of things you do not know about Brandon, I said. I turned back to the room. Mr. Harrington, I said, your loan is callable. That means I can demand full payment right now. If you cannot pay, I foreclose. I take your company. I take your projects. I take your house in Weston with the gold foyer. Rich collapsed into his chair. He looked like a balloon that had been popped. George, please, he said. We are family. We are in-laws. No, I said. We are not. You laughed at my whine. You called my house a hovel. You bailed out the man who assaulted my wife. I walked over to the table. I leaned down so my face was level with his. I am not going to foreclose, I said. Not today. Rich let out a breath. Thank you, George. Thank God. But I have conditions, I said. Name them, Rich said. Anything. First, I said, you will fire him. I pointed at Brandon. Brandon jumped up. Dad, no. You cannot do that. This is my career. You do not have a career, I said. You have a last name you stole. Rich looked at Brandon. He looked at me. There was no hesitation. He is fired, Rich said. Done. Pack your desk, Brandon. Brittany gasped. Dad, you cannot fire my husband. He is a liability, sweetheart, Rich said. He almost cost me the company. He is done. Second, I said to Rich, you will apologize to my wife. You will apologize for every sneer, every insult, every moment you made her feel small. Rich stood up. He walked over to Alice. He looked like he was swallowing glass. Alice, I am sorry, he said. I was rude. I apologize. Alice looked at him. She did not smile. She just nodded. And third, I said, I want you to leave. Get out of my sight. Rich grabbed his briefcase. He grabbed Susan. They ran for the door. They did not wait for Brandon. They did not wait for Brittany. They fled like rats. Brandon and Brittany stood alone on one side of the table. Alice, Sterling, and I stood on the other. Brandon looked at me. His face was a mask of confusion and terror. Dad, he said. How? How is this possible? You are a mechanic. I am a Bennett, I said. And Bennetts build things. We do not just steal names. Brittany stepped forward. Her eyes were calculating. She looked at me with a new expression. It was hunger. George, she said, her voice sweet. This is amazing. You are a secret millionaire. Why didn't you tell us? We could have celebrated. We could have... Stop, I said. I looked at her. I looked at the ring on her finger. You called me an anchor, Brittany. You told me to go to a nursing home. You laughed when your husband changed his name. I turned to Sterling. Leonard, show them the rest, I said. Sterling pulled out one last document. This is the deed to the property at 42 Oak Street, he said. As we discussed, it is owned by the trust. However, the trust has decided to develop the land. Develop it? Brandon asked. A spark of hope lit up his eyes. You are going to build the condos. Dad, I can help. I know the plans. I can manage the project. No, Sterling said. We are not building condos. We are donating the land. Donating it? Brandon asked. To who? To the city of Boston, Sterling said. For a new waste management transfer station. A garbage dump, essentially. Brandon's jaw dropped. You are turning our childhood home into a dump, he whispered. I am turning it into something useful, I said. It is better than letting a Harrington live on it. But the money, Brandon cried. The value. You are throwing away money. I have plenty of money, I said. I walked over to Brandon. I stood right in front of him. You wanted to be a Harrington, I said. You wanted the prestige. Well, now you are unemployed. Your father-in-law hates you. Your wife looks like she is about to vomit. And you have no house. Dad. Please, Brandon begged. I am sorry. I made a mistake. I will change my name back. I will go to the court tomorrow. I will be a Bennett again. I looked at Sterling. Sterling shook his head slowly. I am afraid that is impossible, Mr. Harrington, Sterling said. The trust documents are quite specific. Once the name is renounced, it cannot be reclaimed for the purpose of inheritance. The bridge is burned. Inheritance, Brandon asked. What inheritance? Sterling smiled. It was the smile of an executioner. We are not talking about the house, Mr. Harrington, Sterling said, or the debt I just bought. We are talking about the Silas Bennett estate. Brandon looked at me. Grandpa Silas, he whispered. But he cut you off. He died, I said, and he left everything to his only surviving son. How much? Brandon asked. His voice was barely a squeak. I did not answer. I looked at Sterling. Tell him I said. Sterling looked at Brandon. He looked at Brittany. The estate is valued at $60 million, Sterling said. Brittany screamed. It was a short, sharp sound. She grabbed the table to steady herself. $60 million, Brandon repeated. He looked like he had been shot. And under the terms of the will, Sterling continued, $30 million of that was designated for the grandchild of George Bennett, provided he bore the family name. Brandon fell into his chair. He put his head on the table. He made a sound like a wounded animal. $30 million. He had signed away $30 million to impress a man who just fired him. I looked at my son. I felt a twinge of pity. But then I remembered the van. I remembered the syringe. I remembered the shame in his voice at the wedding. You got what you wanted, Brandon, I said. You are a self-made man. You started with nothing, and now you have nothing. I took Alice's arm. Come on, Alice, I said. We have a plane to catch. Where are you going? Brandon mumbled into the table. Italy, I said. We are going to drink wine. Real wine. We walked out of the conference room. We left Brandon Harrington crying over a pile of legal papers. We left Brittany screaming at him. We left the sharks to eat each other. We walked to the elevator. The doors opened. We stepped inside. As the doors closed, I looked back one last time. I saw my son lifting his head. He looked at me. His eyes were full of regret. But regret is free, and he had paid full price for his arrogance. The elevator went down. We went out into the street. The rain had stopped. The sun was breaking through the clouds. It was a beautiful day to be a Bennett. The summons arrived at Brandon's temporary address, his in-law's basement, on Saturday morning. It was a heavy cream-colored envelope sealed with red wax. Inside, a single sheet of paper requested the presence of all potential beneficiaries of the Silas Bennett Trust at the offices of Sterling & Associates in Boston on Monday at 10 o'clock. I knew Brandon would come. Despite the humiliation at the title company, despite losing his job, despite being thrown out of his own life, he would come. Hope is a dangerous drug for a desperate man. He would convince himself that I was just an angry father trying to teach him a lesson. He would tell himself that blood is thicker than water. He would tell himself that $60 million cannot simply vanish. He would think there was a loophole. He would think he was entitled to a statutory share. He would think he could outsmart a dead man. Monday morning was crisp and bright. The sky was a piercing blue that hurt the eyes. Alice and I arrived at the law offices 15 minutes early. The firm occupied the top 3 floors of the Prudential Center. The conference room was different from the one at the title company. This was not a place for business deals. This was a place for judgment. The walls were lined with leather-bound books that smelled of dust and authority. The table was made of black marble. It felt cold to the touch. Leonard Sterling sat at the head of the table. He did not look like a man who had just flown in from New York. He looked like he had been carved out of the chair itself. He wore a charcoal suit that absorbed the light. His hands were folded on top of a thick file. We sat on the left side. Alice wore a new dress she had bought for our trip to Italy. It was blue. It brought out the color of her eyes. She held my hand. Her grip was loose, relaxed. She was no longer afraid. At 10 o'clock exactly, the heavy oak doors opened. Brandon walked in. He was alone. Brittany was not with him. Rich Harrington was not with him. He looked like a man who had not slept in 3 days. His suit was wrinkled. His tie was crooked. He had cut himself shaving on his jaw. But his eyes were feverish. They darted around the room, assessing the luxury, assessing the cost. When he saw me, he straightened his spine. He tried to summon the arrogance he had worn at his wedding, but it was a thin, transparent mask. He sat on the right side of the table opposite us. He placed a notepad and a pen on the marble. He tried to look like a businessman. He looked like a defendant. "Good morning, Brandon," I said. "Dad," he nodded. His voice was tight. "Look, about Friday. I know things got heated. Rich was out of line. Brittany is, well, she's stressed. But we're family. I'm glad we're doing this. I'm glad we're finally looking at the big picture." He was already spinning the narrative. He was already trying to bridge the gap he had burned. Sterling cleared his throat. The sound was like a gavel striking wood. "This is not a mediation," Mr. Harrington, Sterling said. "This is a formal reading of the trust distribution schedule pursuant to the death of Mr. Silas Bennett." Brandon looked at Sterling. "Who is Silas Bennett?" "My father," I said. "Your grandfather." Brandon frowned. "You said he was a drunk who died in a ditch." "I said he was a tyrant, who I left behind," I corrected. "I never said he was poor." Sterling opened the file. He did not look at Brandon. He looked at the papers. "Let us begin," Sterling said. "The estate of Silas Bennett has been liquidated and consolidated into the Bennett Family Trust. All debts have been settled. All taxes have been paid. The total value of the distributable assets, including cash, securities, and equity in Bennett Steel, is $62,400,000. Brandon gasped. It was a wet, sucking sound. His eyes bulged. He looked at me, then back at Sterling. He did the math in his head. He was calculating percentages. He was buying mansions. He was buying his way back into the Harringtons' favor. I could see the greed washing over his face, erasing the shame, erasing the fear. 62 million. That's incredible, Brandon breathed. Sterling continued, his voice devoid of inflection. The trust divides the assets into 2 equal portions. Portion A, consisting of 50% of the estate, is designated for the surviving biological child of Silas Bennett. That beneficiary is Mr. George Bennett. Sterling slid a document toward me. "Mr. Bennett, the funds have been deposited into your private account as of this morning. $31.2 million. I did not look at the paper. I looked at Brandon. He was smiling. He was actually smiling. He thought this was the preamble to his own payday. He thought that if I got 30 million, he was next. Sterling turned the page. Portion B, consisting of the remaining 50%, is designated for the direct lineal descendants of George Bennett. This creates a generation-skipping transfer intended to secure the family legacy for the grandchildren. Brandon leaned forward. He was practically vibrating. "That's me," he said. "I'm the only child. I'm the direct descendant." Sterling stopped reading. He looked up over his glasses. He looked at Brandon with an expression that might have been pity if sharks could feel pity. "The document has specific qualifiers regarding Portion B," Sterling said. "Qualifiers?" Brandon asked. "What kind of qualifiers?" "I'm his son. It's automatic." Sterling pulled a single sheet of paper from the file. It was old. The edges were yellowed. It was the original trust charter signed by my father 20 years ago. Silas Bennett was a man of tradition, Sterling said. He believed that the strength of a family was held in its name. He believed that a man who did not carry his father's name did not carry his father's blood. Sterling began to read from the yellowed paper. To be eligible for Portion B, any grandchild or direct descendant must at the time of the distribution legally and publicly bear the surname Bennett. Furthermore, any descendant who has voluntarily taken legal action to remove, alter, or renounce the Bennett surname shall be deemed to have severed their lineage. They shall be treated as having predeceased the grantor. Their share shall be voided and returned to the charitable remainder trust. The room went silent. The air conditioning hummed. A car honked 40 floors below. Brandon sat frozen. His mouth was slightly open. He blinked once, twice. He was processing the words, but his brain was refusing to accept them. What he whispered. "It is the name clause," Sterling said calmly. "It is quite standard in old money trusts. It ensures the continuity of the family identity." Brandon let out a nervous laugh. It sounded like a bark. That's archaic. That can't be legal. You can't condition an inheritance on a name." "I assure you, Mr. Harrington, it is entirely legal," Sterling said. "It is a private trust. The grantor can place almost any condition he wishes on the gift. The condition here is simple. You must be a Bennett to inherit Bennett money." Brandon stood up. His chair scraped loudly against the marble floor. "I am a Bennett," he shouted. "I was born Brandon Bennett. My birth certificate says Bennett." Sterling opened a side folder. He pulled out a framed document. It was the frame I had placed on my mantel. It was the court order Brandon had sent me. Sterling placed the frame in the center of the table. The silver edge caught the light. "This is a decree of change of name," Sterling said. "Dated October 14th. Filed in Suffolk Probate Court. Signed by you. Signed by a judge." He tapped the glass with his index finger. "In this document, you petitioned the court to legally and permanently change your name to Brandon James Harrington. You stated under oath that you wished to abandon the name Bennett. You cited personal preference and professional branding as your reasons." Brandon stared at the frame. He stared at his own signature. He looked like he was seeing a ghost. I can change it back," he stammered. "I can go to the court today. I'll file an emergency petition. It was a mistake. I didn't mean it." Sterling shook his head. "I am afraid that does not matter," Sterling said. "The clause is specific. Any descendant who has voluntarily taken legal action to renounce the surname. The act of renunciation is the disqualifier. The moment that judge stamped this paper, you triggered the clause. You cut yourself out. It is irrevocable." But I didn't know," Brandon screamed. He slammed his hands on the table. "I didn't know about the money. If I had known, I wouldn't have done it." I spoke for the first time. "That is the point, Brandon," I said. He turned to me. His face was red, his eyes wild. "Dad, you have to stop this. This is insane. It's $30 million. You can't let them give it to charity because of a piece of paper." "I didn't let them do anything," I said calmly. "You did this. You stood on a stage and told 300 people you were ashamed of me. You told them my name was dirt. You wanted to be a Harrington so badly. You wanted their prestige. You wanted their status." I pointed at the frame. "Well, you bought it, son. You bought the name Harrington. And the price was $30 million. Brandon looked at Alice. He pleaded with her. "Mom, please. Tell him to give me my share. He has 30 million of his own. He can just give me half. We can fix this." Alice looked at him. She had tears in her eyes, but her voice was steady. "We can't fix it, Brandon," she said. "You broke it. You broke us. You made us feel small so you could feel big. And now you want us to pay for your mistake." "I am your son," he yelled. "No," I said. "You are a Harrington. You made that very clear. Harringtons don't need handouts from mechanics." Brandon collapsed back into his chair. He put his head in his hands. He began to sob. It was not a cry of sorrow. It was a cry of loss. He was grieving the money. He was grieving the life he thought he was about to have. Sterling closed the file. The $31.2 million designated for Portion B has been transferred to the Bennett Foundation, Sterling said. It will be used to provide vocational scholarships for young mechanics and trade workers, people who are proud to work with their hands. He stood up. This concludes the reading of the distribution schedule. Mr. Harrington, you are excused. Brandon did not move. He just sat there weeping. I stood up. I helped Alice up. We walked to the door. Dad, Brandon croaked. He did not look up. Dad, I'm broke. Rich fired me. Brittany kicked me out. I have nothing. I stopped. I looked at the back of his head. You have a name, I said. You have the name you always wanted. Wear it. We walked out of the office. We took the elevator down to the street. The city was busy. People were rushing to work. Cars were honking. It was the noise of life. I took a deep breath. The air tasted sweet. $30 million gone. Just like that. Does it hurt? Alice asked me. I thought about it. I thought about the little boy who used to hold the flashlight for me while I worked under the hood of a car. I thought about the man who had stood on that stage and mocked me. It hurts, I said. But it's a clean pain, like setting a broken bone. It hurts, but now it can heal. We hailed a cab. To the airport, I said to the driver. We had a flight to Rome in 4 hours. We had a new life waiting. And somewhere in a high-rise office, Brandon Harrington was staring at a mahogany frame, realizing that it was the most expensive piece of art in the world. He had traded a kingdom for a title, and now he had neither. The silence in the conference room shattered like a glass dropped on concrete. Brandon stopped weeping. His head snapped up. His eyes were red and wild. He looked at the framed decree on the table. He looked at the document that had cost him $30 million. He let out a scream that sounded like an animal caught in a trap. He lunged across the table. He grabbed the frame. He smashed it against the marble edge. The glass exploded. Shards flew across the polished surface. He didn't care. He clawed at the paper inside. He ripped the decree out of the broken frame. His hands were bleeding. I undo it, he screamed. I take it back. He tore the paper in half. He tore it into quarters. He shredded it until it was nothing but confetti raining down on his expensive suit. There he panted. He looked at Sterling. He looked crazy. It is gone. The paper is gone. I never changed it. I am Brandon Bennett. I am the heir. Give me the money. Leonard Sterling did not flinch. He did not move away from the flying glass. He simply adjusted his cuffs. He looked at my son with a mixture of boredom and pity. Mr. Harrington, Sterling said calmly, destroying a copy of a court order does not negate the judgment. The record exists in the Suffolk County database. It exists in the state archives. And most importantly, it exists in the timeline of the trust. You cannot tear up the truth. Brandon stared at the pile of torn paper. He realized what he had done. He realized it changed nothing. He fell to his knees. He started trying to piece the papers back together. His blood smeared on the white fragments. Dad, he sobbed. Dad, help me. Tell him. Tell him I am your son. I stood there. I watched him. I felt a phantom pain in my chest where my heart used to be. But the heart is a muscle. It pumps blood. It does not pump money to ungrateful children. I cannot help you, Brandon, I said. You made a choice. You chose the Harringtons. You should go to them. Brandon looked up. His face was a mask of snot and tears. They are outside, he whispered. I frowned. Who? Brittany, he said. She is in the waiting room. She wanted to know the number. She wanted to know how much we got. Of course she was. Vultures do not fly far from the carcass. She was waiting to see if I had cracked. She was waiting to see if her husband was useful again. Sterling pressed a button on the intercom. "Security to the main conference room," he said. "We have a disturbance." 2 security guards entered. They were large men in dark blazers. They looked professional. They looked like they handled disappointed heirs for a living. "Escort Mr. Harrington out," Sterling said. The guards grabbed Brandon by the arms. He went limp. He dragged his feet. They hauled him out of the room. I looked at Alice. "Do you want to see this?" I asked. She took a deep breath. She smoothed her blue dress. "Yes," she said. "I want to see the end of it." We followed the guards. We walked down the long hallway lined with mahogany. We walked into the plush reception area. Brittany was sitting on a leather sofa. She was reading a magazine. She looked bored. When she saw the doors open, she stood up. She smiled. It was a hungry smile. She expected a check. She expected a victory. Then she saw Brandon. He was being dragged. His suit was torn. His hands were bleeding. He was sobbing. Brittany's smile vanished. She dropped the magazine. "Brandon," she snapped. "What are you doing? Get up, you are making a scene." Brandon looked at her. He pulled away from the guards. He stumbled toward her. He fell at her feet. He grabbed her legs. He stained her designer pants with his blood. Brittany pushed him away. She looked at the blood with disgust. "Get off me!" she shrieked. "What happened? Did you get the money? Did the old man pay up?" Brandon looked up at her. He shook his head. "No," he choked out. "It is gone." "What do you mean gone?" Brittany demanded. She looked at me. She looked at Sterling. "How much did he give you?" 5 million, 2 million. "Nothing," Brandon whispered. 0. Brittany froze. She looked like a statue of ice. 0, she repeated. "He disinherited me," Brandon cried. "Because of the name. Because I changed my name to Harrington. The trust says I have to be a Bennett. I lost it all, Brittany. I lost $30 million. The number hung in the air. 30 million. Brittany's eyes went wide. She computed the loss. She computed the mansions she wouldn't buy. She computed the vacations she wouldn't take. She looked at Brandon. The mask fell. There was no love in her face. There was no concern. There was only pure, unadulterated rage. "You idiot," she screamed. Her voice cracked. "You stupid, useless idiot." She kicked him. She actually kicked him with her pointed heel. She kicked him in the shoulder. "You changed your name for my father," she yelled. "You did it to impress him, and you cost us $30 million. "I didn't know," Brandon wailed. "You should have known," she shrieked. "You should have checked. You told me your father was a nobody. You told me he was trash, and he was sitting on a fortune." She turned to me. She walked toward me. Her eyes were wild. "George," she said. Her voice changed instantly. It became pleading. It became desperate. "George, listen. We can fix this. I can make him change it back. I will make him do whatever you want. We are family. I am carrying your grandchild. Or I will be soon." We were planning it. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had mocked my house. I looked at the woman who had tried to put me in a nursing home. "Stop lying, Brittany," I said. "There is no grandchild, and there never will be. Because you do not love him. You love what he can give you. And now he can give you nothing." Brittany's face twisted. She looked ugly. "You old miser," she spat. "You are hoarding it. You are going to die soon anyway. Give it to us. We deserve it. We are young. We have a future. You have no future, I said. Not with my money. The elevator doors opened. A man stepped out. It was Rich Harrington. He looked flushed. He looked like he had run all the way from his office. He saw the scene. He saw Brandon on the floor. He saw Brittany screaming. He saw me standing tall. "What is going on here?" Rich demanded. He walked into the room like he owned it. "Brittany called me. She said there was a settlement meeting. Where is the check?" Brittany turned to her father. She pointed at Brandon. "He lost it." "Dad," she screamed. "He lost $30 million because he took your name." Rich stopped. He looked at Brandon. "What?" he asked. "The trust required him to be a Bennett," Brittany explained. She was talking fast. She was distancing herself. "He changed his name to Harrington. The lawyer says it disqualified him. He gets nothing. Dad, he gets nothing." Rich looked at Brandon. He looked at the bleeding mess on the floor. "Is this true?" Rich asked me. I nodded. "It is true," I said. "The Harrington name was very expensive, Rich. It cost my son his inheritance." Rich's face turned purple. The veins in his neck bulged. He looked at Brandon with a contempt that was terrifying to witness. "You fool," Rich roared. "You incompetent moron. I brought you into my firm. I gave you a title. I let you marry my daughter. And you bring me nothing but debt and failure." He turned to me. "George," Rich said. His voice was shaking. "About the loan. The bridge loan. We can work something out. If I get Brandon to annul the name change. If I get him to sign over his rights." "There are no rights, Rich," I said. "He has no rights. And neither do you. The loan is due. I expect payment in full." Rich looked at me. He saw the wall. He saw the end. He turned back to Brandon. "You are fired," Rich said. His voice was low and deadly. "Do not come back to the office. Do not come to the house." "Dad," Brittany cried. "What about me?" "Come home, Brittany," Rich said. "Leave him. He is dead weight. He is an anchor." Brittany nodded. She took off her wedding ring. It was a big diamond. I remembered Brandon telling me he had financed it. He was still paying for it. She threw the ring at Brandon. It hit him in the chest. It bounced onto the carpet. "I want a divorce," she said. "I am filing today. Do not try to contact me. You are broke. You are nothing." She walked over to her father. Rich put his arm around her. They turned their backs on Brandon. They walked toward the elevators. Rich stopped. He looked at me. "You win, George," he said. "You destroyed him. I hope you are happy." "I did not destroy him," I said. "You did. You taught him that money was the only thing that mattered. You taught him to be ashamed of who he was. I just let him see the bill." Rich sneered. He pressed the elevator button. The doors opened. They got in. They did not look back. Brandon was alone on the floor. The security guards were standing over him. He was holding the ring in his bloody hand. He was shaking. He looked up at me. His eyes were empty. He had lost his job. He had lost his wife. He had lost his family. He had lost his fortune. And he had lost his name. "Dad," he whispered. "Please. I have nowhere to go." I looked at Alice. She was crying. But she did not move toward him. She held my arm. She knew. She knew that if we helped him now, we would destroy him forever. He needed to hit the bottom. He needed to know what rock bottom felt like without a cushion. "You have a name, Brandon," I said. "It is Harrington. Ask them for help." "They left me," he sobbed. "They hate me. Then become someone else, I said. Become a man who doesn't need a name to be worth something. I turned to Sterling. Thank you, Leonard, I said. We are done here. Sterling nodded. He signaled the guards. Mr. Harrington, Sterling said, you need to vacate the premises, or we will call the police again. Brandon stood up. He staggered. He looked at us one last time. He looked like a ghost. He turned and walked toward the door. He did not take the elevator. He took the stairs. He disappeared into the stairwell. I listened to his footsteps fading away. Down, down, down. Alice leaned her head on my shoulder. It is over, she said. Yes, I said. It is over. We walked out of the office. We took the elevator down. The city was waiting for us. The sun was shining. We had tickets to Rome. We had a new life. I took out my phone. I checked my bank account. $31 million. It was just a number. It did not make me better than anyone, but it gave me the power to say no, and that was worth everything. We hailed a cab. Airport, I said. The driver smiled. Going somewhere nice, he asked. Going to see the world, I said. I looked out the window as we drove away. I saw a man walking on the sidewalk. He was wearing a torn suit. He was looking at his feet. It was Brandon. I did not stop the cab. I did not wave. I let him walk. He had a long way to go, and he had to walk it alone. That was the only way he would ever learn to stand. I took Alice's hand. I squeezed it. We made it, I said. She squeezed back. We made it, George. And for the first time in a long time, the silence between us was not heavy. It was full of peace. The storm was behind us. The horizon was clear, and we were finally free. 3 months is a long time when you are poor. It is an eternity of counting pennies and fearing the mailbox. But when you are rich, 3 months is a breath. It is a heartbeat. It is a montage of sunsets and silk sheets. Alice and I spent October in Tuscany. We rented a villa on a hill. We drank wine that tasted like sunshine. We ate pasta made by a grandmother who did not speak English but knew how to hug. Alice's color returned. Her cough disappeared. The doctors in Rome told us her heart was strong. They said stress was the killer, and the stress was gone. We spent November in Paris. We walked along the Seine. I bought Alice a scarf made of cashmere. She cried because she looked at the price tag. I told her the price did not matter. I told her we could buy the whole store if we wanted. She laughed. It was a sound I had not heard in years. A free laugh. Now it was December. We were back in Boston. But we were not in the rotting house on Oak Street. That house was gone. The bulldozers had come last week. The city was already pouring the foundation for the waste transfer station. I drove by once. I watched the walls of my old life crumble. I felt nothing. It was just wood and plaster. We lived in a penthouse now. It was on the 35th floor of the Millennium Tower. It had floor-to-ceiling windows. It had a doorman named James who tipped his hat to me. It had a fireplace that turned on with a switch. It was raining tonight. A cold, freezing rain that turned the streets into black mirrors. The wind howled against the glass. But inside it was warm. Inside the air smelled of roasted chicken and expensive wood smoke. I sat in a leather armchair. I was reading a book about Japan. We were planning to go in the spring for the cherry blossoms. Alice was knitting. She was knitting a sweater for a grandchild she did not have. She said she was knitting it for charity. I knew she was knitting it for the ghost of the family we lost. The intercom buzzed. I frowned. We were not expecting anyone. Leonard Sterling was in New York. The cleaning service came on Tuesdays. I walked to the wall panel. I pressed the button. Yes, I said. Mr. Bennett, the doorman said. His voice was hesitant. There is a man here to see you. He says he is your son. I went still. Alice stopped knitting. She looked at me. Her needles clicked once, then went silent. I looked at the video screen. The camera showed the lobby. There was a man standing near the desk. He was soaked. His hair was plastered to his skull. He was wearing a jacket that looked too thin for December. He was shivering. I zoomed in. It was Brandon. He looked 20 years older. His face was gaunt. His eyes were hollow. He looked like a man who had seen the bottom of the well. Alice stood up. She walked over to the panel. She looked at the screen. She put a hand to her mouth. "Oh, George," she whispered. "Look at him." I looked. I saw the arrogance was gone. I saw the pride was washed away by the rain. "Send him up, James," I said. Alice looked at me. "Are you sure?" "I am sure," I said. "We have to close the book, Alice. We cannot leave the last chapter unwritten." I went to the kitchen. I poured 2 glasses of wine. It was the Petrus. I had saved a bottle. I put the bottle back in the cabinet. I left the glasses on the counter. I heard the elevator ding in the hallway. I heard footsteps. They were slow, heavy footsteps. There was a knock on the door. It was a weak sound. A beggar's knock. I opened the door. Brandon stood there. He was dripping water onto the marble floor of the hallway. He smelled of wet wool and cheap alcohol. He held a plastic bag in his hand. It contained all his worldly possessions. "Hello, Brandon," I said. He looked at me. He looked at my cashmere sweater. He looked at the warmth of the apartment behind me. "Dad," he rasped. His voice was broken. "Dad, can I come in? It is freezing." I did not step aside. I stood in the doorway. I was the gatekeeper. "Why are you here, Brandon?" I asked. He shuddered. A drop of water fell from his nose. "I have nowhere else to go," he said. "Brittany took everything. She took the condo. She took the car. She sold my clothes, Dad. She sold my watch. And the Harringtons I asked." He let out a bitter laugh. "Rich Harrington blackballed me," he said. "I cannot get a job in this city. No one will hire me. He told everyone I was a fraud. He told everyone I tried to embezzle from him. I am sleeping in a shelter, Dad. I am sleeping on a cot next to junkies." He looked past me. He saw Alice standing in the living room. "Mom," he cried. "Mom, please. I am hungry. I am cold. I am your son." Alice took a step forward. Her instinct was to run to him. Her instinct was to warm him and feed him. She was a mother. But she stopped. She looked at the frame on the mantel. I had brought it with us. The name change decree. It sat next to the fireplace. A reminder. She looked at Brandon. She saw the man who had stood on a stage and laughed at us. She stayed where she was. She did not come to the door. Brandon looked back at me. He saw the resolve in my face. He began to cry. "Dad, I am sorry," he sobbed. "I was stupid. I was arrogant. I wanted to be like them. I thought they were better than us, but they are monsters. You were right. You were right about everything." He fell to his knees. He knelt on the doormat. "Please," he begged, "just for tonight. Let me sleep on the floor. I will change my name back. I will go to the court tomorrow. I will be Brandon Bennett again. I will be a mechanic. I will do anything. Just help me." I looked down at him. I remembered the day he was born. I remembered holding him in the hospital parking lot because I was afraid to drop him. I remembered paying for his college tuition with money I made working overtime on weekends. I felt a pull in my chest. It was the old George Bennett trying to get out. The George Bennett who forgave everything. But then I remembered the wedding. I remembered the laughter. I remembered the phrase, "I am ashamed to be his son." I took a sip of my wine. It tasted like justice. "Stand up, Brandon," I said. He looked up. Hope flickered in his eyes. He stood up slowly. "You cannot change your name back," I said. "Not for me. You told the world you were a Harrington. You signed the papers. You made the speech." "But I hate them," he said. "I hate the name." "That does not matter," I said. "You chose it. It is your name now. It is your legacy." I reached into my pocket. I pulled out my wallet. It was an old leather wallet, the same one he had mocked. I pulled out a $20 bill. I held it out to him. "Here," I said. He stared at the money. $20, he whispered. "Dad, you have millions. You have $30 million that was supposed to be mine." "It was never yours," I said. "It belonged to a Bennett. You are a Harrington." I pushed the bill into his hand. "Take a cab to the shelter," I said, "or buy a meal. It is up to you, but you cannot stay here." "Dad, please," he wailed. He tried to grab my arm. I stepped back. I was fast. I was strong. "Do not touch me," I said. He froze. He saw the fire in my eyes. "You said you were ashamed of us," I said. "You said we were content with mediocrity." "Well, look around, Brandon." I gestured to the penthouse. I gestured to the view of the city lights. I gestured to his mother wearing silk. "We are not mediocre," I said. "We are survivors. And we survived you." He stood there shaking, holding the $20. He looked small. He looked defeated. "But you are my father," he whispered. I shook my head. "My son died the night he changed his name," I said. "My son died when he tried to put me in a cage. You are just a stranger with a familiar face." I put my hand on the door handle. "Go be a Harrington, Brandon," I said. "Go find your own way. You wanted independence. You have it." "Dad, no," he cried. "Don't close the door. Please. It is dark out there." "It has always been dark for us," I said. "We just learned to make our own light. You blew yours out." I looked him in the eye one last time. "Here only the Bennett family lives," I said. "There is no room for Harringtons." I closed the door. I locked the deadbolt. It made a solid, heavy click. I heard him screaming on the other side. I heard him pounding on the wood. I heard him calling my name. "George. Dad. Please." I turned away. I walked back to the living room. Alice was standing by the window. She was looking out at the rain. She was crying. "Is he gone?" she asked. "He is gone," I said. "Did we do the right thing?" she asked. Her voice was small. I walked over to her. I handed her a glass of wine. "We did the only thing we could do," I said. "If we let him in, he would have destroyed this too. He would have hated us for saving him. He has to save himself." The pounding stopped. The hallway was silent. I looked at the frame on the mantel. The glass was cracked where he had smashed it, but the document was still legible. Brandon James Harrington. It was a tombstone. But it was also a declaration of independence. For us. I sat back down in my chair. I picked up my book about Japan. "Kyoto looks beautiful in April," I said. Alice wiped her eyes. She took a sip of wine. She sat down opposite me. She picked up her knitting. "Yes," she said. "The cherry blossoms. I read that they represent renewal." "Renewal," I said. "That sounds perfect." Outside, the wind howled. The rain beat against the glass. Somewhere in the city, a man named Brandon Harrington was walking in the cold, clutching $20. Inside it was warm. The fire crackled. I turned the page. We were Bennett's, and we were finally home. Looking back on that rainy night, I realized that a legacy is not built on a bank account or a fancy title, but on the integrity of the name you carry. Brandon thought he could trade his history for a shortcut to the top, but he learned the hard way that a tree without roots cannot survive the storm. Money is powerful, yes. It gave me the means to protect my wife and reclaim my dignity, but it could not buy my son a conscience. True wealth is not what you have in your pocket. It is sleeping soundly at night, knowing you never sold your soul for a seat at a table where you were never truly welcome. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more. What would you have done if your son came back knocking in the rain? Would you have opened the door or kept it locked? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.